Hello and welcome to episode 211 of the FReality Podcast. The internet decided to bin a few things this week. Twitter's axing a large portion of its workforce following the Elon Musk acquisition. YouTube's gone and smoothed out those sharp corners on thumbnails. Quite a nice new look, actually. And it was time for us to bin the old intro. So no more intro for you. We're naked until work on the new one is complete. All right. Well, if you'd like to nab the eyes and ears of this darling crowd starting December 3rd, just email us. We've got the holidays fast approaching. Now here's today's hefty hitters. Adam's roaming ringside at New Reality out in Utah. Meta empties the kiddie playpen, making all those 13-year-olds feel strangely empowered. The Crystal Maze spits out a Pimax headset that's sporting a suspiciously solid resume. Quest Pro sure means business, but does it offer pain or pleasure for working day VR? We'll be singing Be My Valentine with PSVR 2's price reveal and pre-orders opening in November. And at the end of the Rainbow Road, Jose has been holding back a blue shell to secure a race win with recent and upcoming releases. Okay, well, chat, how was your Halloween? What have you been up to? And I'm going to go ahead and introduce the crew. First up, there is a tale of mice and men, and it portrays what our botanist friend does when he's not mixing fertilizer or leading Linux youth groups in a march against poorly optimized kernels. How have you been, Rowdy?
I have been fantastic. I have been playing, everyone knows my favorite game so much in the past couple of days have been a little bit less, but like I've been absolutely obsessed by it. So much that I actually forgot the name. And I've actually been playing it like, especially after the podcast, like nonstop. It's been such a pleasure, like to have something so different and still so familiar, I think, to play.
I can't remember it either.
You don't remember the name?
You blew it out of my head.
Last Clockwinder?
Yeah, the last Clockwinder. That's it. Yeah. It's I think it's probably like my favorite game of the year. Even like I like it so much. It's like it ticks a lot of boxes for me. I mean, I explained it last week, so I'm not going to go over it again. But like I've been spending a lot of time on crushing every puzzle, optimizing it up until the very least little bits. Even going past like you have like certain recommendations per level. You need to get so many clones in order to do it. Just trying to go like just one below that. Like I haven't finished it yet. The story is actually very entertaining. I like the story. It's a bit of an emotionally driven story, which I think is always nice in a VR, especially in a story driven experience. I don't think that the story in itself is something that is just added on, but it actually adds a lot of quality to the game as well. I think the story is good enough to stand on its own. A lot of applause for those developers for making an experience that, because I'm very critical of my VR experiences. It's been a pretty long time since I've last said that I actually enjoyed a VR game as much as I did this one. Yeah, for sure.
God, I'm trying to think back. Like, what was the last game that I remember Rowdy really?
I think The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners.
Yeah. So it's been like, how long is that now?
Yeah,
Saints and Sinners, is that 2019? Is that 3.5 years ago? Jeez.
Oh man.
Yeah,
it's been rough.
yeah, I can tell it's been rough because I think like I've seen when you like want to be excited about something. I've definitely seen you, Rowdy, like want to be excited about certain things, but then they just didn't hit the mark. And we were just talking.
And that's not to say like that those other games are bad or something, but it's just that I think that my expectations have gone a lot higher during the years of like playing VR experiences, that it's kind of hard for me to be entertained by something that feels the same. And I think that this game, even though there are other games like it as well, that also use that cloning kind of thing and like have like a fun little story intertwined. But for this game, I've been actually like looking forward to going back in, which is different compared to like other games that I've played. And many VR games are all right. It's not like I don't have fun with them, but not to this extent, for sure.
I'm so glad you've got your hook, your fix. You know, that's really what it is. I feel like it's tap the veins fix. I won't flap my arm there
Also,
with that.
for some people who are confused in the chat, and maybe for the audience listeners as well, like we're not actually naked, like we're just
That's a good point. Good point.
like pointing that out, or maybe we are, and maybe the audio listeners just like tune in next time and then figure out for themselves. Also, like if the people are confused about the hour, it's because the clocks went back already went forward. Was it back or forward actually?
It's usually fall back.
Back.
Fall back, spring
right,
forward.
That's how you
so fall back, yeah.
Fall back, spring forward. Oh wow, I never thought of it that way. Well, you learn something every time. Every time.
It's an Americanism, I think. I think it's very common to be said here, but in Europe not so much. Yeah, fall back.
We need some more extra help when it comes to these things, so we need to make it into a rhyme or somehow to remember.
Right, I just forgot. I just don't know. Simply, like, never came up with something.
Well, it's great to see your smile every 2 weeks, Rowdy, and this is no different to that. So, all right, let's move on. This lass does not wait around. She's a goer, and when the apocalypse hits, I trust she'll be the first one to fashion up a nail bat all of her own. I think she's even tapped enough to give it a pet name. That's Adam Bombardi for you. All right, Adam, how's the trip going, and how are you?
Good so far. I'll go into more of the details of the actual trip itself, but yeah, so I'm basically in an Airbnb right now, so that's why you don't have the lovely green studio behind me. It was interesting because yesterday we have a couple of coworkers that were leaving, so we had like a VRChat kind of a go away party for them, and I was like, oh man, but I've never tried Airlink on Airbnb Wi-Fi before, so that was an experience. But it was actually okay. I luckily this Airbnb is pretty good with it. But it was super fun. It just reminded me of how, because like we're all remote, so there's Europe, Canada, Australia, the States. It just reminded me of how nice it is to kind of be in this, feel like you're in the same space as people that are across the world, or coworkers that some of them I've only met once, and I've been working there for about a year and a half now. So it was super nice to be able to go in there and just do fun stuff with coworkers, and I'm very lucky that I have coworkers. We're all into VR. We're all nerds and geeks, or gurks, I think, as Jose called it.
Gurks.
So yeah, it's been super fun, but I'll get into all of the new reality stuff a little later. I have a lot to talk about, plus something that'll be happening after the podcast, which I'm also super excited and kind of scared for.
Very looking forward to that. Very, very looking forward to that. But yeah, that's a special feeling. I gotta say, anytime you get that opportunity to just be in VR with people and realize you can kind of feel their physical form to some extent, and that's really something special. Fantastic. Well, we've got a podcast ahead of us, and it's at the center of today's podcast for sure. And like a wind-up Jose in the box, this energetic tech is a floodgate of facts. Like his dear friend Pandora's box, he waited impatiently for his time in the spotlight. And it's 2022. If this isn't the reckoning, then I don't know what is. So, Jose, how excited are you for today?
Oh, I'm very excited. First of all, what's up, you guys?
Hey.
Happy Halloween's, I guess, aftermath, I guess, to call it, right?
Kind of.
The rise of the Gurks, as I like to call it.
Well, you got to explain the Gurks now, because that was a pre-podcast quickie that we just had. So, where did Gurks come from?
So it's I wish I could add some elaborate story, but it was just an accidental slip up. I was trying to say VR geeks all in one word, and the word Gurk just accidentally came into the ether. So I'm going to coin it from here on out for gamer VR geeks, right? So quick Gurk, right? So, and the reason that word accidentally came out was looking at the Quest Pro reviews that we'll talk about later. So many perspectives about this amazing device, all focused around the mindset of gaming. So I'm very excited. The last few days, I actually been sitting down more than ever. So I actually been more relaxed, enjoying the Quest Pro, revisiting a lot of 2D games. I actually been playing a lot of old school 2D games. I actually been speedrunning a lot more than I used to. That's something I used to do a lot as a hobby.
I didn't know you did that. That's awesome. I need to know. So what kind of games do you speedrun then?
Super Mario World is actually one that I'm actually pretty good at, and you can speedrun in VR headsets now. That's something that you cannot do on a Quest 2.
Atom just
you
fell in love
can-
with you, I think. Like, she grabbed your chest. Like,
Well, I'm a gamer.
childhood game.
Oh, dude, it's there's something about revisiting these games in a very new way, right? With like high input and like low input lag rather, and it's just so cool seeing the beginnings of these monitors, these giant screens slowly being phased out. So
Yeah.
very excited.
Amazing. Well, I can
Nice.
certainly feel it off you, and it's one of the things that we've certainly attracted plenty of comments about you, Jose, over the last 2 podcasts. So, can't wait to distill it down and just hear how Quest Pro has been for you. So that's a hefty highlight, I gotta say. Before we get to my highlight, I would like to ask, what has chat been up to? So, guys, are you seeing anything in particular there in chat? I see a lot of high
actually-
fives and things going on.
Yeah, there was a Sampler 19 went to Hyde Park for Halloween. There was a Ghostbusters 5D ride, but unfortunately they said it was pretty disappointing. Not really 5-dimensional and 3D glasses gameplay, so it had a lot of latency. That's a bummer because that sounds like it'd be super cool. I guess we'll just have to wait for the Quest version.
It's just
then,
like me,
right?
like high expectations, you know. Whenever I read 5D, then I know it's not going to be 5D.
That's
Yeah.
actually, it's really funny you say that because that's actually quite a big gimmick in the arcade location-based world where they use
Yeah.
additional dimensions or Ds in order to mean completely weird stuff. Like they probably meant 5D as in, the chair rumbles,
of
the
course.
air, and then so they start splitting senses. So air, water, fire, or whatever. So they
The
added
Lost
many Ds.
Avatar.
I'm
No.
sure I've
Yeah.
seen a 7D advertisement. I'm sure
Yes.
in like
I've
a
worked- yes, probably for me. I've worked on some Chinese roller coasters and VR based ones, and they always add like as many Ds as possible. So I actually have a picture with a roller coaster card. It says 7D on it with some copyrighted DreamWorks pictures on it. It's pretty cool stuff.
I literally thought you're gonna do the entire Avatar intro right there. You know, air, water, fire.
heart.
Back with the Fire Nation. No.
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
Nice.
We also have someone who's playing Iron Man VR. That's DLG27. Iron Man VR and Quest 2. They said that being able to turn around completely makes this game feel new compared to the PSVR version, which I still have to get my hands on that game. Haven't tried it yet. I've been out.
It's a worthwhile. I can only speak from the PSVR experience, but it was the first PSVR game that made you feel free. Like you actually you didn't recognize the fact that you were being tracked by a single camera. It was weird because it really felt like a Quest-like experience back on PSVR. Which I'll be honest, most PSVR titles make you very readily aware that you are forward facing only. Like it is,
Right.
It beats you up anytime you move outside of that span. So that's a good one. That's a good one. Anything else in chat? We good to move?
I think so far we're good to go. I'll let you know if we find anything else. Just we're asking about the game name for Last Clockwinder that we finally figured out eventually. But yes,
Finally
it's the
got it.
Last Clockwinder.
That's going to be happening
Rowdy.
more and more on this podcast as we age more and more. You know, more gray hair,
Sure.
white hair. Just Rowdy's working on Alzheimer's, so don't worry. He's got a fix in the works, I'm sure. All right. So with my quick highlight then, I went and I checked out that VR. I'll call it like International Festival of Arts, 5Rs in Toronto, with a local crew of cyberpunk donning VR nut jobs, is the way I would describe them.
Wow.
To set the scene, though, first I need to ask you, for those of you who have been on the internet, and I think all of you have been on the internet long enough now, do you remember End of the World? It was a 2003 era Flash internet that showed various nations deciding to bomb each other. It was just like one of these Flash animations that just kind of went viral.
Wait, actually written the German way, or is it like how you pronounce it? Like
No, it's written with ZE. Yeah. It's
Ends of the World.
End of the World. Yeah, it was like it had a whole bunch of different nations. Kind of, it was awesome. I shared a link with you, Rowdy, to a
Right,
modernized
yeah,
version of it. If you can
I'm
run
gonna
that just
show
to
it right now.
jog people's memories of what this was. This is like one of those old days back when we had Newgrounds and those kinds of things. I mean, Flash is all but dead ever since that technology died. But you remember this one, Adam? This is like
now that I see it. Oh my god.
I've seen it as
I'm not
well,
seeing
yeah.
the screen, but is that the one there's like a French guy narrating it the entire time?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I am late tired.
I am yes, okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. So that just sets the scene for some of the kind of experiences that I got to do in VR. So I'll explain this a little bit, but I got to experience a couple of different things at this showcase, right? And they were all on Quest 2s. Ranging from like 360 videos, stuff like the David Attenborough, like 5K or 8K HD stuff, which was pretty neat. Saw something on plants. I got to see a rehabilitation camp in China, which was used for internet addiction. So if you're into games too much or whatever, your parents ship you off to this camp. So they kind of it's like an internment camp, and they like beat you up until you don't love the internet anymore. And then I got one where there was like this fortune telling thing happening where I was communing, and then my ex-husband came back from the dead to kill me. Some really fun stuff, right? Like loads of random things. But from all of that, there was one standout title. Okay, and I was encouraged to check out this title that was truly wacko. And when Zim says wacko, you know it's messed up, right? Like it's like this was messed up. It comes from a pair.
Like, can we show this on YouTube even?
Yeah. It's showable. It's weird. Thankfully, the trailer. So this comes from a pair of French artists, and it's called Webby's Wonderworld. Now that might sound like you've got like Flippy the Toad or something, but no. It's a 360 VR video where you step through a bizarre cyberspace, like led by this young boy with angel wings coming off of his cheeks, called Webby. Okay, and I mean, he's like a coked up Cupid. He's wacky kid, right? But he's like happy and gleeful. He's innocent looking, but totally insidious. Like he's that kind of kid, right? And this world is so freaky and strange. There's just kind of weird like things happening, like Super Mario tubes that are feeding various chunks of the internet to viewers downstream. The whole thing is weird. And the unfortunate part about this is that like tickets to join this particular cult for yourself sell on a particular website called gate22.net at about 25 ahead, and you have to go along with like 6 people. Now, I think that's kind of extortionate. I get it, artists need to get paid and all that, but I probably would have been happy paying $5 for this experience, which was about 15 minutes long. They've got other things like virtual museums and stuff up there. So while I can't recommend, gathering your 5 nearest friends to go toy around with Webby, I just had to kind of like give a pat on the back to the artists who made this because it's so fecked up that I kind of had fun. And
that sounds so wrong.
And I can only recommend that people at least check out the trailer and listen to Webby's voice because you're led by his narrating voice the entire time. And it is so messed up. As I said, it brought me back to 2003. I'm so glad that stuff like this happens in VR. And I really think that art does have a place. But 5 Hours was fun. We got together, had some beers, and just had a good time. But the thing I really like about it, and I'll just show this for our video watchers, is to have like a small cornucopia, like a catalog of things that you can do, and walk into a place and be like, and these are all like rated and have a certain amount of time, and you had a booked like 2-hour led session with an attendee helping you through various things, free Halloween candy, that type of thing. It's just, it takes so much effort to curate something like this. And I just want to applaud the team behind 5 Hours for like keeping that running. 7th or 8th year I think that they've got it up now, and it's just like these things need to keep happening. And people need to be able to, get to that stuff. But like content sharing isn't easy. It was really, really neat just to get to participate in one of these because unlike Kent Bai, I don't fly around the world, going to Tribeca or this or that or Rain Dance and stuff and like in person. And so we get to miss that out. It's kind of like the piece that you represent, Jose, from an LBE part, like all this artsy fartsy stuff. We just totally miss it. Like, unless you catch it on somewhere like itch.io, like the artist just decides to load their project up, or somebody's selling it, you generally don't get to it. And you don't get to hear what's good and what's terrible. So I was very, very happy to be able to do that. But that's enough of the odd things, right? Let's move on to the newsreel and talk about some real stuff, things that you can get into. And I think the first up, we're gonna flip it over to our frequent flyer, Adam, who's kicking it out in Salt Lake City with those mighty Mormons at the New Reality Convention.
Yeah, so this is a first-time VR event for VAL, or Virtual Athletics League, and I think what they did right was that they flew in, a lot of well-known names, like Mike's here, Gamertag, Cass and Sherry, some TikTokers too. You've got Tech Manju, Tiny Beats, a bunch of people basically. But I think some of the like new event also shines through. So it kind of takes place in like a part of a mall that looks like maybe it was scraped out on the inside. So it's kind of like warehousey, which I think was fine for the streams. But you've got kind of these booths that are set up in this like unfinished kind of looking area. And some of them aren't always manned, which is fine. I mean, they had like VZ Fit here. That's the people that have the the Quest, and I don't want to call it a game exactly. It's more of like a fitness app where you could put cadence sensors on an exercise bike and be able to use Google Maps to pedal in places in VR. It's really cool. They've got the Walkabout was supposed to be here, but unfortunately, I think it was the CEO's mother or something like passed away as they were walking out the door, so they weren't able to make it. They have Monkey See, Monkey Doo Doo, which I have not tried that one yet. There's a couple of other like peripheral companies and everything, but of course the big showstopper is Shell Games with Among Us. That was the big live stream that happened yesterday where they had 8-on-8 and they would swap out the creators within each session. And that was actually really fun because you got to, actually in the videos of LS Toast, who donned one of the Among Us suits. So in the very beginning of the show, they had him just totally take a whack at a poor other Among Us spaceman, which was really entertaining because
is that a pinata?
This thing is it's a pinata.
Oh my god,
that was great, and he was having a great time just running around the warehouse in this suit. It was the funniest thing ever. But I will say so far, so it's still going on today. I think that they are having like Population 1 and Epic Roller Coaster like competitions, but it's more of like whoever came in person can sign up. And I don't know if there was a big enough of a audience or like big enough of a marketing where enough people knew about this event other than VR, like the VR content creators and people who just are way too active on Twitter like myself. But the highlight was definitely the Among Us stream. It was chaos. I'm pretty sure at one point Cass and Sherry were going to get a divorce because this was very much like, no, I was my wife, I know this, and it wasn't. It was great to be able to see them all play and just see everybody yelling, and then as the little Among Us space people there, you just see the hands aggressively pointing at people like there's you, and everyone just arguing. I say arguing, but it's like friendly arguing. But it was great. It was a crack, and I kid. It's going to be so amazing once this game is out. It doesn't a couple days, I think. Right, it's going to be $9.99.
Right.
Yeah, the price point is amazing on it. I'm so happy about that. But yeah, like Among Us is really awesome. It's a pity I didn't realize that they were going to stream it. I would have tuned into that. That sounds like a fun thing. I hope it's available on rebroadcast somewhere because that sounds like fun to watch back.
It is. It's on, I believe, Valve's Twitch page, which is twitch.tv/ValveVR_esports. And there were things you could tell as a first-time event that could have been better about it, like some of the green screen qualities for the casters, or just some of the camera angles, or maybe even maybe I'm also spoiled by IVRL, but maybe in the live stream, they basically just had the four creator views at one time, but because there were 8, sometimes they would swap out the squares of someone else. But it was a little chaotic as who to look to at times. So it would have been nice to maybe look at one person's view for a little while. But I think that they learned a lot from this event, and I don't mean to try to say that it was not great, because it was. I think it was really smart that they brought a lot of people here, but I think there's a lot that they can learn from this, and I hope that they continue to do them, though, because we don't have a lot of VR specific gaming events. Like we might have a PAX that's like just general gaming, and then maybe you'll have some VR tacked on, but to be able to have more VR specific events is huge. So I think as long as they've got good takeaways, they learned some things for next time, I think it'll be pretty good. They just, you gotta do the thing, and you gotta make mistakes, and in order to improve and do better next time. So
that's true.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to next year, though. It was, as far as socially, it was super fun. Everybody, it's always amazing getting to see all the other creators too from across the pond, or even from stateside, some that I've never met before, like Otterworldly. I didn't realize that Tiny Beats even lived like in the same state as me, or same part of California. So I was like, oh, small world. But yeah, super fun. So I hope they do it again. And yeah, just maybe learn from this one.
Like
a couple things differently.
Only VR conventions has been rare across the whole timeline. I think you've got like VR days out in Europe. You've got obviously Oculus Connect for a time was the go-to for a VR meetup, but it's such a special feeling when you get there and you don't have to explain what VR is to somebody.
Yeah.
You can be excited about it without explaining every time. And that's really nice. But just being able to have people come together, people who are excited, like having that kind of party in real life. Like you talked about a virtual, going away party for colleagues, but bringing people together in the flesh is that's a very special thing. And I think if the pandemic and lockdown taught us anything, cherish every single one of those. Like you don't know it's going to happen next year. You don't know it's going to happen, for a period of time. So like, I don't know. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that people get to come together. Definitely supportive of the event. It sounded like a little bit of a creepy venue, the way you described it, almost like, those places that you go to paintball, you like paintball in like a busted out, like old like mall and there's zombies popping out at you or something. That's what it sounded like.
Even like the Between Realities and QDC guys, they were gonna do a live podcast in the venue area, but because the background kind of looked like some shady person might out of they decided to actually do it at Dave & Buster's, which went they ended up having a little like a banquet room at Dave & Buster's, and that worked out really well for them. And so Dave & Buster's is technically part of this event. It was really cool because the podcast and the Among Us live stream got streamed on all of the TVs everywhere around Dave & Buster's, which was super cool. So if you're just there playing games or sitting down and eating or at the bar, you just look up and you see people playing Among Us VR, which was cool. That part was like fantastic. And they were super nice, the Dave & Buster's people, to just us VR gurks.
I like this. You definitely coined a term. Yeah, we've got this.
We're keeping it.
Gherkin,
but getting to see people from in real life that maybe you've only met on Twitter, or maybe you haven't even seen their face because everybody's got VR headsets on. Yeah. So sometimes it's like, it's me, so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know what your eyes looked like. I'm sorry.
Can be disappointing as well, right?
I will say so far I haven't been disappointed. Luckily, I haven't had kind of that's me anyway,
Have you noticed, Adam, have you ever experienced like meeting somebody in person and then like to try like some content and then realizing that you're vibing with them better in the virtual space because you're so used to interacting with them in VR?
There's maybe not VR specifically, but like Twitter. I will say that some people have just a certain, like maybe it's the way they type or where they're from, but they may come off as more like gruff or serious on Twitter, but then you meet them in person and they're so nice. So it's like, yeah, you can't always judge people based on just what they post on Twitter. It's really those real life interactions that you're like, oh, okay, I had this one perception of you just based on this, but now that I know like the real you, I know that you're actually quite more cheery than I thought. So that's always good. But I am super excited because like I know Mike and Gamertag and a couple others, they got to try this experience called Jump, which I'm kind of scared for. It's basically skydiving in a but they have a Valve Index that's in what looks like a motorcycle helmet, and they put you in the squirrel suit. So you're in like a wind tunnel and you're actually skydiving in VR. I'm going to try it after this, but we'll see. I think the scary part for me will be because they were saying that you actually do have to step off of something initially. Yep. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm going to do it even if someone has to push me because I want to do it.
I was going to say your vestibular system, your whole body is like sending Neanderthal level alarm bells off. Yeah. Don't. Even Richie's Plank Experience, which is this like it's the simplest app that just went viral, right? But like when you step off a 1-inch piece of plywood, you feel like you're going to die. I mean, it's silly, but obviously those instincts, and this is something I was really worried about when we started off with VR. I was like, is this going to suppress all of that like coding that I've got in me? Like, if I go and I go sim racing, then when I go out with my car, am I going to be lead-footed? Like, am I going to want to, just naturally go faster? Am I not going to care about crashing into stuff? Thankfully, all that stuff kind of. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just run people over.
I would be the opposite of that again. Like, I think I would like jump off, and like the first thing I would try is like, what happens if I fly into a wall? Just to see like how the system reacts. Yeah, like that's one of the first things you do in a game, right? You either kill the person right in front of you, or you see how far you can push the game, right?
That's actually. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I wanted to add on. I wanted to add on about Jump, the experience. So funny enough, that was actually, it reminded me back because the guys behind Jump are the same people behind Zero Latency. Not Zero Latency, sorry, not The Void, but Disney.
Void? Yeah.
The Void. So it's really cool,
good.
but that's exactly the what I was thinking about that you mentioned. Is like the first thing I will do in that is like I want to see what a crash looks like. Like, I want to see that. I don't want to see the cool jumping because I've seen those videos. I want to see somebody just straight into a mountain. What does it look like?
It may be me. You never know. I don't know how well or what kind of skill like is required. So I might just totally not open my arms or something. I don't know. We'll have to see.
That sounds so cool.
But
I'm sorry.
It's scary because it's a ledge in physically, like at least in Richie's Plank experience, it's just a virtual ledge, but you're actually on flat ground. But on this, you do have to step off an edge to get into the wind tunnel part.
That's scary.
So we'll see. I'm excited though. Excited, but a little scared. But mostly excited, I think.
Have you guys ever done the Richie's Plank experience that is actually on a actually lifted up board?
As I said, I've only gone like an inch or so off the ground, and even that was enough for me. The thing that I did that was closest to what Adam's describing, however, which again, I'm loving Kent By on this episode. I did like shortly after him, Birdly, where you like have your arms out extended on this flapping experience, and you soar as a bird through almost like a series of skyscrapers, like you'd see Spider-Man, flinging through, but you're flying through as a bird or whatever, and your whole body is suspended, right? So you're planking basically, and this thing has these like mobile fins. I don't know whatever happened to Birdly. I think it ended up. I don't know. Is it still a showpiece, or are they gone? I don't know.
The last one I saw that was pretty popular was at Area 15 in Vegas. They had two of them. They had a line. I don't know if they're still there. This was like 2 to 3 months ago, so hopefully they're still there. But yeah, no, I think I completely agree. Adding like a physical immersion layer to these games. There's hopefully at IAP on X Podcast, maybe I'll have some videos. There's a company that does still heavily improve Richie's Plank experience. So there's one where they have you like on a cross bridge. There's one with the actual board lifts up while you're still standing on it, so it actually rumbles.
God.
There's a few crazy experiences. So hopefully we can get some footage for you guys of all these experiences.
That'll be good. So upcoming, we've got that to look forward to. Great. Well, that's New Reality. Thanks for covering on the ground for Adam for us. You guys have been like jumping around like jackrabbits or something. Plenty of plane flights. I hope that continues and that we can get some of us to CES next year and other stuff like that. So looking forward to continuing to cover new tech, new events, and all of that. Now, speaking of kind of Halloween and the the dodgy surroundings, I had one unfortunate holiday discovery on Halloween in that I had loaded up my trusty old Oculus Go to discover that previously paid for DLC was inaccessible, locked, and pissing reviewers off. So I was playing Face Your Fears, which is one of the best-selling Oculus Go games, where you could unlock each of the chapters it was only like $1 or $2. It wasn't very expensive, whatever we paid for it. But there were, 8 or 9 of these different experiences you could do. For example, plane flight gone wrong, getting buried alive by your angry ex. That was a favorite of mine. Spiders, this kind of stuff, right? But no, you're just left with the kid's bedroom scene and robot King Kong. So you have two things, even if you paid for the whole package. So for me, and looking at what the reviewers were saying, how no one's responding to their woes over the last number of months and years, it is quite disheartening to think that just a few years on from digital purchases, Meta shutter support and seemingly have given no response to the matter at all. It really sets a scary precedent when you think about, the amount of money that people put into, say, purchase DLC for Beat Saber. What about Walkabout, Puzzling Places? These games that you come to know and love. What if 3 years from now, all your content was locked off and gone and, support's not helping out at all? So truly a haunting experience. I thought I would just echo that here because I am continually concerned, just like I was in the early Steam days when it was like, okay, it's digital. You're going to just fold up in like 2 years and all my money's going to be gone, right? They've managed to keep stability. Meta hasn't been as bulletproof, actually, over its years. While its services tend to be stable and they move on with good R&D, they do tend to be front-leaning in terms of their focus, and the kind of looking in arrears support that they've had hasn't been great. So I know the Go is like a dead headset at this point, and it's unsupported officially, but to have DLC like that all of a sudden, just disappear, yeah, it really got me worried about what the future means for even Quest. We've seen Quest 1, for example, lose favor in the eyes of Meta and the support teams in favor of Quest 2. That's going to be a continuing trend, I feel. But yeah, it's a bit of a hard one for those of us who like to go into the cabinet, take your old console or whatever out and play the old games. So that was a bit of a naughty surprise.
It must be a mistake, no? Like why would you do something like this intentionally, right?
Yeah,
this must be a mistake that they haven't been made aware of, and the game is not being, I don't know, maybe now, like that people are actually complaining about it, that will get it sorted. But this feels like something has been updated and done wrongly, rather
Side
than
effect.
like something intentional, I think. I mean, I give them the benefit of the doubt.
I'm sure it's an unintended side effect, but I wasn't like, you would think that developers would be given the heads up, like Turtle Rock Studios behind this one, for example, would be given the heads up to say, okay, if you want your game to function after cutoff date, then just code it a bit so you can kind of open the doors to everybody who paid the DLC. Right. Or if you're a really nice feeling dev, maybe you just say, I'm going to open the gates now. I've gotten all the money I needed, right? Let's just open the gates. But the inability to play something like that, a feature that was there before, just doesn't taste very good. So I'm going to keep pushing buttons on that one, see if I can get a response from support teams and or Turtle Rock and get the official line, so to speak, from support. And if I get nothing else from it, I want my money back. I want to go and say, hey, really I can't access the stuff I paid for. Refund me. Thank you. So we've had success there before. Anyway, so that was Face Your Fears, a little bit of a holiday bundle for those of you just, with Beat Saber collections of 100 quid or more. Next up, I wanted to talk about Ghostbusters VR, which we know is in development by UK studio Endreams. It's now got its official title, which is Ghostbusters Rise of the Ghost Lord. Again, for those who really like, thinking back to the 80s, this is a special place. It offers a 4-player experience akin to Left 4 Dead and will be taking place in iconic locations around San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, etc., and is launching in 2023. So one we're definitely looking forward to next year. And if you can't wait for that official experience, we also had news of a nifty-looking conversion mod for Left 4 Dead 2 called Ghostbusters Dark Carnival. So for those of you familiar with Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, you can find this new, I guess I'll call it a mod conversion pack, available on Steam Workshop, which is playable with the Left VR Dead 2 mod that converts the original Dark Carnival level with a series of changes to bring the original cast of enemies, weapons like proton packs into the game, enemies from the original game like the Marshmallow Man or Slimer. Really interesting just to kind of see that conversion, but it's like it's a niche of a niche of a niche, isn't it? And they even did a nice little trailer for this. But you have to kind of get the VR mod, have Left 4 Dead 2, get the bundle to kind of convert it, and then find some people to play with, I suppose, who've got the same thing. So
that's it.
The crazy thing is that I think that the trailer looks even better than the trailer from the actual game.
You mean, yeah, so this community project is at the moment
the trailer is really solid.
Really well done. Really well done. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know how the game is, of course, but like the trailer looks like it's like they really highlight, that team play where you have like the other Ghostbusters, they all stand in the same position and stuff like that. It's really well done, the trailer. I like it.
Yeah, it makes me itch for some Left 4 Dead vibes, to be honest. I love that game so much. Like After the Fall, which is the best we've got in VR. Just one of these days.
Well, you didn't like After the Fall?
No, I do like After the Fall. After the Fall is one of my favorite VR games at the moment. I just don't get enough time to play it. I was so happy with I think it was a toxic paint job. I know Britney Spears is now going off in my head, but like my toxic paint job for my shotgun. Oh man, baby, I'd use that any day of the week. I love that game.
Well, I mean, Christmas is coming up. They're gonna have probably the Christmas skins coming back. Plus, they got all the new guns. So then you got to get some time with those guns to get the skins, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that's a great shout, because I hope I get the chance. Rowdy hates skins, but they're not paid for skins. You know what I mean?
It doesn't matter. That's even worse.
Like achievements.
It's even worse.
Why?
Come on. Why? Because
it's a badge of honor, Rowdy, is what it is.
Yeah. Right? Okay. Let's call it that.
It's not paid for. There's no microtransactions. It's just pure effort, right? Although the thing is, last Christmas I was busy getting my family out of the UK, and I saw they were just launching skins and stuff, so I didn't get a chance. So thanks, Adam, for highlighting it. Now I'll set aside a week, take time off work and get a candy cane shotgun. Yeah. There you go. Christmas present sorted. All right. So on to the next thing. A little bit of news we got from Rec Room, which is broad across Meta's platform. First question I want to ask you all is, online, when you're online, who can really tell the difference between an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old here? Like, can any of you really tell the difference? No one?
I guess I just categorize them as kid. Ew.
Yeah. You hear a kid, you're like, kid. I love this. Okay, so this is like the Apple Android thing, right? Like, who likes kids, who doesn't?
Maybe like below 10, because I feel like there's like a baby voice, right? And then sometimes there's like a teen that sort of makes more sense, where they're just being loud and trying to fit in for the sake of the fact that they're a teenager and they're just like want to fit in with the adults. So I think you can kind of tell, but maybe like 10 and under, I might jumble up a bit, or between like 5 and 6 and 10, and
prepubescent sound that just comes out across
Tweakers.
the mics. Yeah, exactly. There's been plenty of lovely names for them. Anyway, just to fill people in, why are we talking about kids online? This isn't like a dodgy after part of the podcast. This is on November 1st, Rec Room tweeted that Meta is requiring all apps on the platform to block users under 13 years of age or be removed from the Quest store. So obviously they're bringing the big guns out. Some of this was in the terms and service before. They go on to say this means junior accounts, which is a Rec Room thing, the junior accounts will not be supported on Meta devices starting November 14th. So that's a very short fuse. They give you and tell you, and then 2 weeks later, boom, all of a sudden, your kid who's happy over there, 12-year-old or whatever, using daddy or mommy's headset in the corner playing Rec Room with his buddies is getting the snip.
Shut up.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. So then the question is, why? Why would Meta do this? Why would they come to enforce it heavier right now? And I do have a theory, and I'd like to open this up for discussion here. But first, let me cover 3 points that, God, it's the third time I'm mentioning him. He's like a wicked witch. Kent Bai and I hammered out in a tennis match on Twitter earlier this week. And there are 3 things that we thought would be potential drivers. Now, the first one is the obvious one. It's a U.S. driver, which is COPPA, Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, which is a federal law in the U.S., which aims to address child protection assurances for websites or online services aimed at children under the age of 13. I think many of you will remember the age of YouTube, when people had these naughty, like Spider-Man outfits and stuff, and they were targeting kids, getting views off them, but the content really wasn't appropriate for someone in that age range. So that made quite a stir several years ago. And COPPA basically deals with, information collection, advertising, and a number of other facets targeting kids, right? So the first thing is COPPA compliance is the banner, right? Banner child of that. I think it goes a little bit deeper. So the first point behind that is, I think something that John Carmack had mentioned, it got me thinking in this way, was about, what about I'll call them free rollers on Quest, right? Download Gorilla Tag on your headset. Who are you paying, right, for those online services? Who are you who's paying for the cost of serving you the content? Who's paying for the network services to connect you with the other kids, right? Are you paying for apps, or are you just kind of running on what you downloaded off of App Lab? So thinking about the running costs of servers and services, I honestly think that given they're kind of tightening the belts at Meta through a number of things that we've seen both internal and through leaks, I think they're going through an expense reduction process, and I think that would help to address the running costs of content servers. Because think of, Gorilla Tag, App Lab freebies, Rec Room, VRChat. None of those require you to put money down. And if you think about consoles like Nintendo Switch, Xbox, right, PlayStation, the consoles were all eventually driven to a paid for networking model where you pay a subscription cost and that pays for your slice of the infrastructure so you can keep riding happily and connect with other people, right? Because it's very different from I'm going to play a game and maybe I'll play it for an hour, maybe I'll play it for 200 hours, but it's kind of a fixed deal. It's not a running cost like what you have if you play World of Warcraft or some other MMO, right? So that's the second thing. That's the second idea, is maybe it's a server cost. Now the third one, and this one is particularly nasty, it's kind of a potential reason, and this is one that Kent came up with, and I was like, ooh, that's naughty. But do you remember Big Screen? What happened with Big Screen? So they were ticketing for events, right? Right? Meta could be playing tough with one of their main competitors, if not all of their main competitors. Rec Room is a big one. And with a platform that's led based on a metaverse through Horizons being the poster child, remember, Horizons doesn't let kids in. If you're under 13, you don't get on into that platform. So this could be Meta essentially strong-arming and saying, hey, play fair. We can't compete unless you're playing by the same rules I'm playing by. So we're going to have to strong-arm you to play by those rules. And I think enforcement is going to be a particularly tricky thing for the platforms like VRChat, Rec Room. Like, how do you enforce that someone is the age they say they are? Obviously, Rec Room has its junior accounts, which have this kind of boundary of what you should be using it for. And it means that kids play with kids and adults don't have to mingle, and all of the protections that come in there. But again, there's no enforcement. You're not exchanging IDs. You're not submitting your passport or whatever. So I don't know, a bit of a weird one. But I just wanted to clarify before we kind of open this up for everybody to jump on it. This is specifically targeting right now Meta, so your Quest, right, or your Rift S if you're still using one, or an older gen headset, right? Say you're on a CV1 and accessing Rec Room. The Quest store presence and that access is what's targeted at the moment by this restriction. If you play Rec Room via Steam, if you play Rec Room not in VR on a tablet, right, iOS for example, or an Android, you will still be able to play the game being below the age of 13. Okay, so just thought I'd throw that out. So let's open this up. What do you think is the reason behind the change, and where do you think we're heading with all of this?
For me personally, I think it's just legal. I think it's just legal reasoning, because, I mean, kids are still going to be able to play Rec Room by just using their parents' accounts. I think that a lot of parents just install Rec Room and have their kids play it, because I don't think kids specifically those junior accounts. I mean, it's more like a legal reasoning. I think that those accounts exist, that they, if something happens, they could say, oh, well, you were not supposed to play it using that account. It breaks the rules and regulations. So I think that the reasoning is just Meta covering themselves in for ensuring that in case something happens, that they don't get because it's still it's personal information, right, that they're collecting. And that's what they want to do, and they can't collect that from kids, especially not under the age of 13. So I'm thinking that that they know that. I mean, people, especially kids, are smart these days. They're gonna find a way to play it anyway. But then at least it can't come back to Meta, just like it did with YouTube. It can't come back to YouTube saying oh, your rules and regulations were not in place. I think that's
Meta. Exactly to your point, Rowdy, is that Meta is a analytics and data gathering company, right? So they have to, and you just said it yourself, this only affects Meta products, and that's the reason they're strong arming the competitors, because these competitors, and that's the reason why Meta's going all in on VR, is because they were cut off from the traditional internet, right? So the internet is currently dominated by the hardware ecosystems that allow you to get onto the internet, right? So when you look at the original Oculus, these platforms were device agnostic, so they could pretty much work on everywhere. So when you look at Rec Room, you can track a 13-year-old or whoever. What happens when they shut down Rec Room and they open up Beat Saber, right? So Rec Room on other platforms, they can track that data because, they went from Rec Room to Beat Saber, from Beat Saber to Gorilla Tag. That's the issue with Meta right now, is that they can track you when you get into Gorilla Tag, they can look at the user data, but they can't do much with that data. What does that user like outside of Gorilla Tag? And if there is a way to get that data, can you justify it legally? And it goes back down to the legal issue. It's all tracking, it's all data. Web 2.0 is completely locked out from Facebook. That's the reason Facebook is going down. If they had access to all of this interests that are evolving in real space, Facebook will still be number one. People keep assuming that Facebook is like going down because of interest. No, it's just they don't have access to your interests anymore.
And on top of that, like the entire thing about like Meta being able to collect data is regardless of which account that you use, I'm 100% certain that they know which person is using that account. Yep. And they can probably estimate the age by, the size from the ground, the amount of arm movements, the voice that all of that stuff. So they'll be able, but the legal aspect of it is that they're not like, I mean, let's be honest, like law hasn't really caught up with that because Meta can easily make a profile based on sub profiles that are all working under the same kind of account and then say, okay, this person is a woman and this person is a kid of like around this years, just by the very limited amount of data that they collect. But legally, they need to ensure that the information that they so-called collect is only being collected from people that are actually giving consent.
And also the data that they are getting is not valuable. The data that you get within your ecosystem is not valuable. The value is what people are doing outside of your platform in order for you to be competitive and get that data in and bring that person back in. If you don't know what that user is doing outside of these platforms or these ecosystems or these games, you really can't do much with that data. So they can't legally justify it, but it's also useless. It really is useless data. And that's what's happening right now. It's that Meta's main priority right now is not VR. It's not headsets. It's none of that. It's actually dominating the next phase of the internet, whatever that is. If tomorrow we find out that augmented reality is going to be the number one platform, they're abandoning VR completely. Yeah. It's dominating the ecosystem, holding onto the keys because Apple currently owns access to the internet and it has the most positive tone right now. So it's really figuring that out is how do I get the Oculus app to track you outside of the Oculus app, right? So that's what's happening right now. Apple has access to what you're doing on the Oculus app, but also what you're doing outside the Oculus app. Also knows when you open the Oculus app and you open up Safari to Google similar games like Beat Saber, Oculus doesn't have those results, but Apple does.
Yeah, I was just going to say Facebook definitely used that and has used it for their breadwinning on ad placement and targeted ad spots. I'm curious, Adam, what's your take on all of this Rec Room stuff?
I think pretty much that they are covering their butts, but also trying to remain consistent because even though, yes, a kid can have a Quest, but I'm pretty sure even the parental controls on the Quest are meant for like 13 and up for a parent to, control the teen. So it is kind of a weird disconnect that, technically the Quest platform is like 13 and up, but then you have Rec Room, which is a game that's more geared towards under 13. What I'm curious to see on how this might affect other games, like are they going to have more clear guidelines as well, or is that just going to be covered by Meta as a whole? Because thinking of games like Population 1, VRChat, I don't remember off the top of my head if they specifically say 13 or up, but is that something that now they're going to have to consider? And then even, when you mentioned the subscription-based model, I'm just like, oh man, thinking about, flashbacks back to like, hey, if you want to go online, Nintendo Switch, Xbox Live, all that. But then all of these games that are already existing are going to have to make a lot of changes if that's the case. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I think this is definitely the start of some big changes coming forth. What they'll be, I don't know for sure yet, but it probably also goes into the fact that they say, kids under 13, like if you have the headset too close, like that can affect eyesight and everything. But mostly I think it's a legal, but also just a consistent across all platforms thing. Like we want to make sure that, yes, it's going to be, well, maybe starting with Rec Room. Again, we'll have to see if other games have to follow suit. But yeah, it's just, we say it's 13 as Meta. So it makes sense then that all the games we cover on our platform have to be 13 and over as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would have expected to see more on Twitter or broad form media about other platforms, because this has been in their terms of service for some time. Now they're getting strong with it. Obviously, there's been a equivalent of a cease and desist letter passed from Meta to Rec Room to say, hey guys, you got to comply by X date. Others will have received similar, but I haven't seen the same from VRChat or others. So I don't know if it's phased to some extent, if they're moving target to target, giving different companies different dates. I would have assumed it would have been a consistent date to comply with. But it'd be very interesting to see how it affects other players. The question that I had in my mind, and why I started to go beyond just the legal ramifications, was why now? Why now? This is more than a year old. This is not new, right? This is not a new requirement. Obviously, Meta are getting strong. Jose, you think he's dangling the Quest Pro in front of us?
100%.
Why do you think now that Meta's in this position to reinforce
It's
this
the
line?
only position it has. Once again, it's a data competition. It's gathering information. It's knowing what people are doing with these software ecosystems and dominating the next step, right? So by understanding what is the interest of the mass consumer and knowing what they're going to do with these devices, you get to control what happens outside of it, right? There's a reason why it goes all the way back to the foundations of the Quest platform. It goes back to the store. There's a reason why certain games get into the market and some don't. It's the ones that provide the most data, the most engagement, the most conversation, and the ones that, unfortunately, optically, it looks like that Meta has their grabs on them, but it's really the ones that they have a really integrated relationship, so they can get access to the data that they can't, right? So that's what's happening right now. It is purely a data ownership race.
But so you think they're data cleansing to some extent? So they're saying
you have to. You have to now,
because like with the advent of it's not just about selling their metaverse platform, but are you talking from an advertiser's stance?
Advertiser, software perspective, Meta is now facing the reality that there are companies that you mentioned earlier. You're being locked out of DLC. So now there's going to be companies that will be able to have a much easier conversation with their customers. They're going to be able to say, hey, we've been storing games for over 15 years. Everything that has been cut off from backlog or through licensing, we have done our our homework. We give you a year's, there's history like that. We're talking about Sony. Apple already has a conversation that when it comes to security, I think I saw a poll a few days ago. It was like, who do you trust more, Apple or Meta when it comes to security? And Apple won tenfold, right? So there's a lot of optical value to data right now, and they know that it.
Why does shutting kids off help?
Because now you have an easier conversation with the grandfathers and concerned mothers. They're like, oh, I'm buying this headset for my kid. I don't want my kid's data to get tracked. I don't want them to know what cartoons they love the most in order, so they're starting to get advertising. That's what this device is enabling for adults now. We are entering the age of your eyes are now worth more than anything else. So in order for that data to be valuable, they have to collect pure data. They cannot have a lot of noise in that data. They cannot have the kids that are not spending the money. So everything that we've been listing is really the answer. It's a very complex, singular thing that when you look at it, it comes down to legal, but it's everything we've been mentioning. It's just too much noise right now. And how do you discern a 13-year-old? Rowdy said it earlier. You can through data. And now when you have clean data, and now you get the outliers. Oh, that's a kid. Oh, that's a non-paying person. Those are the ones you lock out of the walled garden, and you can easily tell advertisers they're not a concern, which was Apple's going to have right now. That's the biggest concern, is Apple has, unfortunately, due to the situation that they put themselves in, they have more data than everyone else, but they're also filtering through the most data right now, right? In other words, Internet 2.0 is dead. It's full of adware. It's full of pop-ups. It's tracking information. That's why a lot of people are talking about platforms like Mastodon and all these weird social networks. It's because people are starting to value now and understand that attention is king. And these platforms are now building devices
Yep.
that are completely designed purely for attacking that head on. From multiple cameras, the controllers are now camera based, and people are not connecting the dots yet with that. But yeah, it's all data.
We'll definitely go into that.
Apple is that. Got it.
Rowdy's happy. Yeah. Well, that would be a future. The other thing that I wanted to mention while we're on the topic of these social apps like VRChat, and I would just say that I'm not settled yet in the answer to this one, but there's some plays going on, I think, that are happening at the moment. Definitely strategic changes happening, whether that be survivability of a company or just playing against competition. There's chess pieces moving on the board right now, and I kind of feel that. I do think it's a bit of an odd time, however, if Rec Room now shutter to, junior accounts and those get closed from November 14th. Kids, I think, would generally then just go to the next closest app, maybe VRChat, right? Like we were talking about that. And I don't think VRChat has a junior account equivalent, not that I'm aware anyway. And it's maybe bad timing for this, but VRChat Labs, they now have just unleashed a nifty feature that I also wanted to say in this kind of same breath, which is locomotion, hand and finger tracking capability in a new experimental feature. They launched the new user interface actually for VRChat, substantially helping that in the environment not long ago. But I wanted to also mention this. So you can actually move around with your hands, jump, use the menu, turn, all this kind of stuff with your hands only. So they've come up with quite an innovative approach that initially I looked at it and thought, God, that's going to be frustrating, right? What happens when you want to just let your hands drop or whatever? Is my character going to do a backflip? Like, what's going to go on? But I do think it's like it's another new experiment, like moving us in the right direction of how will we control ourselves when we get to that point where we've got a headset and we're primarily using hand-based tracking and no controllers in hand, because that is a future. I'm not going to say it's the gamer future necessarily, but for use of a headset where you are controller free, it's kind of interesting to see VRChat take a push. And we're also seeing Rec Room and VRChat, just like Meta's doing with Horizon, they're both gunning forward. They're researching. There's R&D going into their products. They're buffing up. They're making their spaces as best as they can, but they also have to live as a business. And so it's really interesting to see what plays they're taking. I think Rec Room a few years ago did a great job with the creator program, and they do make money off of that, kind of have created a virtual currency, and now they're trading that currency for now surviving as a company. So that helps them. But these recent changes are going to really alter the dynamic of who's playing the apps, who's using them, but also who the young creators are who are building these worlds going forward. So interesting to see this kind of line in the sand be drawn that bit harder.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head because usually it's like, are you past 13? Yes, way. But I wonder, I can't remember if when you make a VR. Being completely honest, but I don't remember if when you make a VRChat account, if there is some sort of like a age verification, because it's been so long since I had made a new account. But there might be a birth date or agree that you're 13 or older, but I don't remember off the top of my head to confirm if this is true, because then that would technically still comply with Meta, be in line with their 13
I'm not sure it does in the modern era. I say that because a lot of like EU laws, and the US and EU laws are getting closer and closer together. But like one of the things is, you can put a little prompt that says, are you over 13? It's equivalent of adult websites back in the day saying, are you over 18? Yes, let me in, please. Thank you.
Never seen that.
It's not going to stop anybody, but at least they have
what I mean is,
what is an age gate?
With the richness that Jose is highlighting here of the information that they've got right on you, and what Rowdy's saying is, like, they can pinpoint accuracy within a minute, tell who you are, right? Oh. I can't imagine in the seat of a regulator looking at Meta and saying, it's fine. They filled out the checkbox, but they're lying, so you're fine.
But I do think that is more how it is. I think that the law is way behind on that. I don't think that.
I agree with you.
I don't think that there's currently any kind of regulation that helps with tackling that problem. I think the problem is rather and that's what I'm saying. I think it's just legally covering their asses, because what's stopping them from making a new account?
Bare minimum.
And also, there's going to be companies that, to be frank, that people will trust, weirdly enough, their kids' information with, right? So there will be platforms. There's one that had a very powerful showing a few months ago, which was Disney. That were showcasing their their magic bands, the new models of them. And one of the Imagineers,
what? Sorry, what's a magic band?
it's a fast pass band that allows you to essentially virtually skip the line in or check in for every. It's pretty much a virtual debit card for the theme park.
Like an RFID on your wrist.
It's more advanced in RFID. Currently, they are RFID based, but there are a new version that's coming out. They actually are. They have little. They didn't want to go into details of it, but they have little computers on them, and they're similar. They were trying their best to not compare them to an Apple Watch, but it really will be an Apple Watch. So start thinking about these devices that will be tracking, what you're doing in Disney. And if Disney starts expanding to other locations and having smaller form factors or headsets, there will be a new way of creating walled gardens for children. And maybe that, once again, you have to split the data in order for you to convince
Right.
the legal makers.
It's kind of like battle royale, where like if the kid goes into like a specific zone, like their hats will blow up, right? That's kind of like what they're planning on.
It literally,
Nice.
it's bizarre. Chuck E. Cheese showed a similar concept where they actually have
Blowing
it literally.
kids' heads off.
It won't blow your kids' heads off, but like if you're having a beer and your kid just randomly walks out of the Chuck E. Cheese, you will get a notification. It's like, yo, your kid's trying to run off on you, and you're still in the location.
But I've never heard of such a strong double-edged sword in my mind. Track kids so that they're in the right place. What if someone, the wrong kind of person, gets available to that information? You know what I mean? Like, so kid-based tracking, period, I think, just to me sounds problematic by design.
You definitely have to do a company that has done it for years, who's established, who has done it for historically, has been running theme parks. Those are the people that you might trust with that information, where Meta doesn't have that history. They're a software company, so they're always going to use the data value before the decision, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing with Google. Like, everybody keeps getting shocked when Google, a company that is making decisions based on data, always abandons what's not working. And everybody's like, what?
Yeah, and this is also assuming that the parents are like kind of not tech savvy, but just kind of into it. Because a lot of parents are just like, here's a Game Boy, whatever. And that's kind of the equivalent of the Quest. It's like not necessarily that they have blinders on, but they don't know, and they just kind of want something to babysit their kids for a couple of hours. And I think that's probably a higher majority than we think, because we're all Gurks here. So like we're in this world and we kind of know what's going on. But it's just a lot of it's just regular parents that want to entertain their children and just have them go go somewhere else for a couple hours.
Yeah, I think there are ramifications for this many different ways, but I'm not going to go any further. We're going to call time on the Rec Room thing and move on to the next little piece of quick news. Jesus, we're an hour and 10 in. Okay, I'm going to try to zippity skip through some of this stuff a bit quicker. The next thing I wanted to just highlight here, which is kind of a combination of news. Cyan Worlds revealed that their classic sequel to Myst, called Riven, which is an adventure puzzle game, will be a 3D title with fully traversable space, unlike the original 2D point-and-click adventure. Even though those original worlds looked kind of 3D-esque, they were actually just 2D click adventures. This leads me to think that we might be getting Riven VR, which would be very nice. I really do like Myst. I like their conversion. They have Abduction, which is a VR Steam game. Fantastic. Myst is also in VR now. You can play it in full. Firmament is their next title. That's in development, and that's coming in Q1 2023. And man, it looks good. It really is. Like, some of the visuals on this one are fantastic. They released just 2 months ago 9 minutes of an in-progress footage, which to me is just chilling, because I've played some of the other Cyan Worlds games, and it's just like you start to see, like, not old games brought to future, but this is their new, like, IP sort of in a similar universe. It's set to ominous music, shows you this expansive world that I really can't wait to get frustrated as hell in, complete with at least one laser pointer alignment puzzle, right? So there's always a laser puzzle in Cyan World's games. That's what I've learned, is that there's always you're pointing a laser at something. But I'm really impressed with what Cyan have done so far. They are taking their time. They had a Kickstarter. They've been delayed a little bit. But 2023 definitely has a few games on the cards that I'm interested in. And because it's so different an experience than just your average, rail game or VR shooter or whatever, absolutely Firmament is one to look out for next year. Okay.
Nice.
So with that, and speaking of magic crystals, let's move on to the Pimax crystal and a little bit of news about their Reality 12K QLED headset. Okay, so Pimax gave an update. I always shudder at these Pimax updates because the guys who talk about, they're like used car salesmen trying to sell you something that is definitely dodgy. But anyway, put that to one side. They gave us an update on Pimax Crystal, which is now for Pimaxians. I don't know if that's a subscription or what the deal that is. Maybe existing Pimax purchasers for $1,500, obviously now priced to compete with Quest Pro, or $1,600 US dollars for the rest of us. Reservations are now being opened at 2 per order. $30 gets you a reservation for the Pimax Crystal. So what is it? It's a headset that still keeps the hammerhead design. It's got a DisplayPort 1.4 for tethered content. There's a 6,000 milliamp hour battery that's hot swappable that goes into the headset. Also, they have a fiber optic cable, very similar to what we've seen done with the Quest 2, for example. The lenses themselves are glass-coated lenses and not Fresnel lenses. They've backed away from that to get rid of God rays and all that. It seems that Fresnel have fallen out of favor, it seems, with VR enthusiasts. But this is quite different to Quest Pro, for example, and we'll compare and contrast those a little bit later. The controllers, however, look like clones of the Quest 2 controller, now with a very familiar ring with thumbsticks. They look like they've just gone dark mode, kind of black colored Quest 2 controller. They're kind of nice looking, actually. And someone on the internet said, hey, what if the Pimax controllers were now interoperable with the Quest platform in terms of the tracking system? That would be great. That'd be a really cool feature, because we want to get away from Vive wands and stuff like that and index controllers that are pricey and fall apart. There is also an interesting take that they have. They're not like selecting a strategy. They allow you to pop in lenses that have a different PPD rating for your eyes. So it comes with 2 sets, one that is a wide field of view and another one that is a bit more crisp and fine, but reduces the field of view, which is, of course, the selling point for Pimax headsets. They're magnetic lenses, but you can also screw them into place. So again, some really weird engineering choices that they're making with this headset. It's got auto IPD adjustment, and although it works on Wi-Fi 6E like others, it's kind of touting WiGig compatibility, along with, I understand, a dongle for a faster, stable streaming experience, 60 gigahertz signal, and works well within 5 to 8 meters of your PC, is what they're citing. Okay, so that's their Crystal headset. I am still very skeptical anything Pimax. I know there's a few simmers out there who particularly like it. I've only ever used their 5K headset, so I can't, naysay against the current ones. But their 12K QLED headset was supposed to be out by now, and it's now slipped to next year. They're quoting that about 70% of the certification work, whatever the heck that means, is done on this headset. They showed this little picture of climbing a mountain, saying, talking about challenges getting there. They've had engineering challenges their entire life. I think sticking to a deadline is something that has proved difficult for them, or at least setting a realistic target, or maybe not setting a target that you can't meet, is something that I would just recommend to Pimax. But I do hope Pimax fans get a chance to go after a headset that isn't locked into the Meta ecosystem, isn't tied down in that way. And hey, it's another competitor, and competition is healthy for the ecosystem. So any of you Pimax fans? I don't know, actually, like Jose, what about you? Got a Pimax in your cabinet?
Actually, I have a 5K somewhere, but I'm not really a big Pimax fan. Pimax is a really good example of what can currently be done, but can't be done in mass scale, right? So that's every time I see a new Pimax headset coming out, it's like, oh, this is what you can currently do if you hand manufacture a headset, but not in mass produce. So it's exciting when you think about it, when you see all these headsets, especially the Crystal. It means, wow, we are at a point now where you can reach a standalone hybrid-based infrared and system on the chip based headset, which makes you wonder, okay, if this is now theoretically possible, the companies that make headsets reliably are now figuring out how to do this in mass producing it.
It reminds me of the Vive Pro when they had that module that looked like fins at the back of your head, right? They're able to stream such quality right to a headset, just not too far away from a PC. So that's certainly interesting, and it has applications. As I said, simmers, cutting the cable, I suppose, on a simmer who's sitting on a desk anyway isn't such a big deal. But if you are going to walk about with these things or showcase it, it's still an interesting. I have to say the Pimax logo, almost like the Nike swoosh, the like little tick logo. And the shape and the form factor of the headset, like that hammerhead style design, they just look cool. So I do like that.
I think the design is really nice. There's two things that I think that I like about this headset, or the way that they present it at least. It does feel like it has become more condensed. It isn't as
they did.
It feels like it not shrunk, but it feels a little bit more. Not like that hammerhead kind of thing that you put on, you feel like you're gonna fall over, but it looks like a little bit more of a compact kind of headset. And the second thing, what I do like, but of course that comes at a downside as well, as the modularity of it, switching out components. I like that kind of stuff. What that does, it does add a lot of bulk, of course. It's you can't have something really specifically optimized for the headset to work specifically, and then just swap that out and then swap something else in. There's always going to be some kind of bulk that you need to add in order for that to work properly. I do like that stuff. I've always followed those modular phones where you can swap out the camera, but all of them have been bricks. You need to swap out a camera and I put another camera in. But I do like that. I think in the future, as things become more streamlined, we're gonna see more of that. Swapping components out and doing that kind of stuff. I do like that.
I love that idea. That interoperability must be a Jose thing. Must be, because the idea of almost to build your own headset through parts, right?
Well, it's really funny because this is where I'm going to go completely left, and I'm very, very against modular headsets.
Wow.
I'm
unexpected.
As much as I love modular technology has always proven that always become masters of nothing. I'm more of a believer of, for example, Quest 2 games, business or spatial computing, Quest Pro, right? So if you want to do really high-end PSVR, Valve Index.
Hang on a second, wait. You're citing Quest 2, and I would have argued that Quest 2 is by design a tiered headset, or not modular per se, but for example, you upgrade the strap, you upgrade, you know what I mean? You upgrade the interface. It almost is a modular headset, even from how it's priced.
Yeah.
Because you're pricing it for being the bare bones, but you can go upwards from there officially. I'm not talking just third party. So, but when you say modular, do you mean where they haven't made a hard line in terms of engineering the product?
Correct.
And they've said, oh, you can have both roads.
Yeah, and that's the problem right now, is that right now we're kind of in the the folding micro laptop phase of VR. I don't know if you guys remember the old school Dell laptops that you open it up and the keyboard flipped open like a butterfly in order to go this.
Awesome.
So we're in that era of VR right now where we're over engineering products and hardware in order to answer through hardware what's coming in the future, right? That's what I like to call the Quest Pro. A lot of people keep talking about these devices, and it's over engineering. So when you think of modular devices, they tend, especially right now, like the Pimax. I seen another one. I'm trying to remember the name of Imagine, but they look like little Panasonic goggles, where they're kind of doing something similar. And going after PSVR, and I feel like that's the right route, right? It's figuring out what your goal is. And
that's 100% true. I completely agree with that. I just like the concept of modularity, because
it's so badass. Yeah.
Swapping things out, or improve. I love that concept. But indeed, from a business perspective, you typically have your target audience. You know what works for that target audience, and you engineer everything towards that target audience, of course.
And it's really weird because once again, it just sounds so cool in theory, right? But I also remember the Game Boy Color with the little weird ribbon attachment and the big. God. So when I like to apply things, it's oh man, we've tried modular devices in history and they never work out so well. So I think I really want to see the best PSVR headset, the best augmented reality.
But imagine in the future, everyone has a 3D printer, and you 3D print your
Now you're
next kind of
talking.
component. Like, oh man, like I would
That'd be
love
pretty
modularity
cool.
like that.
I'm with you
know?
there. I'm with you. I'm with you.
I'm all for 3D printed, but I'll tell you, I was
Subnautica?
kayaking. I was kayaking with a 3D printed piece, and it broke because you know how 3D prints have those striations and they're weak on a certain spot. I just imagine your headset like cracking in two.
Just print a new one. Like,
Oh, that's so funny.
well, that's probably what they do at Pimax, to be fair. So, I don't know. But anyway, there you go. That's the Pimax Crystal and the 12K QLED that's coming some point in the future or distant future. Certainly before the Jetsons get here, I think. Adam, did you have something to say about those headsets? Sorry, I thought you were trying to jump in there at some point.
Really, it was just I'm more curious about the controllers, and I know there was like a thread on Twitter somewhere that I lost track of on like, is this something that like they either copied very lightly and can get away with it legally, or is Meta potentially licensing out their controller design so that it's a little easier for developers to not have to button map 5 different or however many out there
Right.
different mappings? So that could be interesting. I want to refine that thread and see if there were any answers in there, because I'm like, oh, that would be interesting if they just started licensing out their controller design to different headset companies.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
So I don't know. That's all I had.
And I think there is still, thank you. And that actually brings a really important point that I forgot to mention earlier is when you pay your $1,500 or $1,600 for this headset, you still need to buy base stations, right? This isn't, it's not tracking itself. So it's not like, that's not a fair price, I think, to be quoting. And we've seen this with Pimax before, where they're like, they just tell you a piece of the puzzle, but nowhere on the product page does it tell you that you need these other pieces. So you'll buy the headset, it'll come, you'll be like, what the hell? It doesn't say anywhere.
I'm not supposed to talk about this much, but I do know some people that do XR analyst work, and we have had conversations. And the reason that Pimax forces you to do that, they know that they should add these base stations to their headsets. It's that they can't. They don't have the allocated hardware in order to do that because Valve is saying no, and Valve currently has one of the largest bulks of base stations. They have a huge storage of base stations. So take that as you will. It's almost like they're waiting for something. They're not letting
Half-Life
anybody
3 confirmed.
get access.
There we go.
Yeah, it's Half-Life. yeah, it's all Half-Life.
Well, I'll tell you what. Go on.
I gotta highlight this comment from Crash Organism here. He said, "Hey kids, happy Christmas! Here is your VR HMD. Here's a solder iron and a hot glue gun. Have fun." Oh man.
Yeah. It's gonna come. Hey, that's what we had with Nintendo Labo, right? Think of how gleeful Nathy was back in the day with that thing. Build your own cardboard headset. So,
put your head in a goose's head. Ass,
But if you
right?
like accidentally wire like the
Goose's ass, I
battery,
think.
put the battery cable incorrectly or something, I don't want to trust people building my headset.
It'd be the parents' assembly, right? That'd be like,
Oh.
someone else gives you, and now the parents have to build it.
100%. Although I usually steal the Legos off my kids when we're building together, so that's my fault. Anyway, on to one of our first main topics. Okay, so Quest Pro. Jose has, I'm sure, like any techie, been immersing himself in this new piece of hardware, and is going to tell us all about it. Jose, over to you, my friend.
All right, so the Quest Pro. I think there's been a lot of conversations about this device. I think the biggest conversation that I feel like we as the podcast we can answer, which a lot of people keep saying it over and over again, is what is this headset for? Who is it for? People are so confused. Is it for gamers? Is it for people that work? It's actually, the truth of the matter is, it's for neither of them. This is actually specifically for the creators. This is an over-engineered device. When you look at it from a hardware perspective, and you look at it also from a developer perspective, and you can see what you can do with this hardware. Of course, all of the things that you're listing in your mind are not made right now, and that's the point, right? This is in order to create all of the advancements that we saw rapidly happening for the Quest 1 and 2 to happening for the Pro, right? So starting with the controllers, a lot of people keep talking about, why is this controller so wonderful? It feels so well engineered. It's because, quite frankly, it is over engineered. This is a computational device. Believe it or not, this device can actually operate and run on its own without the Quest Pro. So think about all the use cases and products that you can do with a rewritable CPU, right? What happens when you have mixed reality and you're looking at devices that the mixed reality headset saying, oh, that's your TV, and you just point at it and then you turn it on with the remote, right? So that's going to require computation. That's what spatial computing is. A lot of people hear spatial computing and they imagine 3 monitors, outside your screen. It's much more than that. It's how do you get a blind person, somebody who doesn't care about visual fidelity, who doesn't care about haptics, or they have those senses but they can't see or they can't feel, whatever the case is, how do you get those people interacting with digital mediums, right? That's what Web3 or spatial computing means. It's integrating all these devices, right? So what the Quest Pro is, it's an over-engineered device from a hardware perspective to answer all of these APIs that will be existing. Is what co-location, tracking the environment, devices that your headset now recognizes and you can point at. So all of those eventuals that will be happening within the next 3 years in computational and software enhancements, this hardware can theoretically do it.
Will the headset still be around then? Because will the headset still be around then? Because on average, the lifespan that those Quest devices have had is like a year, maybe 2 years, and then even they got rid of older headsets. So if we need to wait,
we're still seeing hand tracking with the Quest 1. We just got hand tracking.
Of course, but I can imagine if people make new applications in 2-3 years down the line, that we'd probably have a new Meta Quest Pro device as well. Mm-hmm. So what is there a direct applicability then now for the headset?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you just mentioned there will be a new Quest Pro, right? Eventually in 2 years, but you will still be able to develop everything that is eventually going to be done better on the new Quest Pro with this device.
And that's why you're saying that it's for the creators.
Once again, this is the folding keyboard of the 1990s. This is an over-engineered device. When the Quest 3 comes out, I have a really good feeling that 80% of all the over-engineering of this device won't come to the Quest 3, right? There's a lot of processing. There's a lot of CPUs. Going back to the connectivity of the controller, these are not using the same connectivity as the Quest 2 controller. This is actually using Wi-Fi Direct. This has a Wi-Fi chip in it. Yeah. So it's actually used. Right. Yep. Which is, I mentioned earlier, speed running. A lot of people are not talking about low-level input on these controllers. So we're talking about the beginning of pressure sensing with devices. We're talking about controllers being able to do a lot more refined work because now you're doing software for the controllers independently of the headset. So you're going to see a lot of engineering being done on these devices independently. That's the beginning, once again, of spatial computing. So what is this device for? It's for creators, specifically for creators, not creators that make games, not creators that make software, but creators that are working in the next step. This is for the people that are working on VR desktop, people that are working on immersive. That's
YouTubers.
I wish it was for YouTubers. That was the biggest mistake that Meta did, was give these devices to influencers, to give people to the creators, the people that actually will be using these headsets and will love it from an enthusiast perspective, but that's where the line ends.
I was surprised someone like an Adam Savage or something didn't get targeted by Meta to pick up something like this. Someone who's a devout maker and highlights people who build. And one of the things I wanted just to cover is like a baseline, Jose, in terms of your receipt of the unit that you bought, and also how much time you spent in it. Can you just cover off some of the fundamentals there so that people know where you're talking
from? First of all, I'm not endorsed by Meta. I bought my headset cash. I bought it myself. I've had it. I actually been using it exclusively, except today, where I'm actually using a desktop in order to video call with you guys, but I actually have abandoned my ultra-wide monitor. And I've been kind of focused on what it means to be a spatial VR or a spatial XR user full time, right? And so there's a lot of new conversations and new questions that are being raised in real time, right? Which is a abandoning or a hybridization of the controllers and hand tracking. Right now there's a sensitivity gauge. But what happens when you are hand tracking and typing in real time and you accidentally press 2 keys on the keyboard and all of a sudden the headset thinks you're initiating a trigger or an action, right? Also, how do you...
sorry, just to clarify. So it's tracking your hands out in front of you. Your hands are on the keyboard. Your fingers are too close, so it's assuming that you're trying to make a hand tracking gesture.
Exactly. So it starts tricking left and right. So there's a lot of weird seamless integrations that a lot of software developers, that me from a creative perspective, I'm like, oh wow, all of these protocols. Once again, look at the Pimax, right? Think of it from a software perspective. All of these headsets currently, the XR2 based ones, are running on Android. Think of all the features that are invisible that are running on Android that currently are not in VR. Copy and paste, seamless integration, drop off your headset and open up your browser somewhere else. Once again, these headsets are for those people, those developers, the ones that are thinking about how to make my life easier now that I have an over-engineered device that, truth be told, can replace a monitor. It's just you cannot replace a monitor for very long bursts of time because the battery is not going to allow you to do it. But you can definitely replace a monitor with this device, especially if you were born in the 90s. I don't know if you guys ever use a CRT monitor.
Yeah,
it is not a CRT monitor. It's better. So
you can't degauss it. Oh man, I'm not buying it. Degauss it.
Oh man, I really the best. A lot of people have been trying to find use cases to show the Quest Pro to people. Sega Arcade Classics, which gives you the virtual space where you can actually play classic games and you're like in the 90s room, and you can see an old school CRT TV. That's the use case for the Quest Pro, because it makes you realize that you have a bigger sense of immersion than on the Quest 2, and then you realize because you're looking at a screen in a virtual space that you can read. You can see pixels now in a very sharp way. You can read on its power of the pancake lenses, but it's also the software capabilities because the over-engineering of the hardware. It's remarkable.
I've got a burning question in my mind, and I just want to know. So you've used this thing for multiple days. I know you were at 4 or 5 last count I saw on Twitter.
Yeah, almost 2 weeks now.
So describe your working day a little bit to me, just in terms of like you have the charger sitting on your desk, you pick up the headset. Like, can you just tell me how did the working day go and what stood out to you as like pain points and things that you didn't expect to be so good?
Seamless integration right now, right? So a lot of these headsets are designed to eventually replace your computational laptop or device, right? Right now, you can't really do that. So what I decided to do was completely get rid of my desktop from my room environment. I put my desktop in a closet. I put a DisplayPort emulator.
Cold turkey. Shut it away.
Yes, I hid it away. I put a DisplayPort emulator. I have automation scripts, which essentially Windows turns on, logs in, opens up pretty much every single agent available. So VR streaming desktop, immersive, Oculus, pretty much all of them running to ensure that my headset can connect to them, and got myself a very powerful Bluetooth antenna, allowed my keyboard and mouse to communicate for wherever the device is, and use the headset day to day. So that is emails, operations, gaming. I've been doing a lot more gaming, ironically enough. Content.
And what about the battery? Because we talked about that last time.
It all depends what kind of computer user you are, right? To be honest with you, I never noticed the battery issues unless you keep looking at the battery percentage. I usually I'm the type of computer user that plays a game for about 2.5 hours and then takes off the headset, puts it on the charger, walks away, grabs a cup of water, has a few conversations, looks at his phone, puts it back on. The battery is enough charge that gets you about another 30 to 40 minutes. So if you kind of start managing your time correctly, and you just always remember to put on the dock, which is the best feature on the Quest Pro, is the dock. It's the ability to always remember you got to put it on the dock. It's not a cable that you're going to connect to. It's just
that, because if this would have to replace my full working desktop, then I think the sessions that I would do, it would probably last for me up until noon. And then it would maybe have an hour of charge, but then I would have to be able to do another 4 or 5 hours. Yeah. But that's currently that is not possible, right?
It's not. Exactly. It's definitely not possible, but for sure, based on what you just said, all of this can be solved from a incremental revision in the supply chain without disrupting the product itself. So you will be seeing the battery getting better. the dock itself, what happens when you add, low level GPU access, USB-C port reading, a display port, and now this is just the laptop, and then the Quest is just a device that you take with you and remote into it.
Right, but you're not, for example, using it with a battery pack or anything like that at the moment.
No, not at the moment. I purposely am trying not to.
Yeah.
Because
I haven't feel for it.
I haven't had the feel for it yet. I haven't really felt like, oh man, I need to be inside this headset for until the battery dies. But I never have actually seen myself being in that headset for that long.
I figured.
Yeah,
you're an operations guy, right? Like you're running a business, so you must be hopping out of that quite often. I would think
a lot. It's a phone, so I haven't really seen a need to like, man, I have to connect this and tether myself in.
I got some silly questions for you. All right,
that's
are you using a keyboard with kind of a mixed reality desktop experience more often than you're using the controllers when you're doing your work? Yeah.
I wish immersive is a really good. All of these platforms that are trying to tackle spatial computing at the moment are all really good, but they also don't kind of get it, right? It's all gimmick based right now, and that's the problem. Is that immersive is a really good virtual desktop manager. That's all it is. There's nothing really there that makes you go like, oh, this is the future of spatial, right? Because people think of collaboration, but that's not the collaboration that people will be doing in these headsets. Collaboration is going to be bursts of data sharing. It's going to be, hey, we're in the office. Here's all you need quickly. Nobody wants to be in a VR headset for very long. So answering all of these quick automation workflows is kind of where the development is needed right now. As I said earlier, copy and pasting, being able to share a quick document and then putting your headset on and just revising it with somebody in real time. That's what VR co-working is going to look like. It's not going to be a bunch of people in a virtual space looking at avatars working. That's silly. That's not it. And
just while you're running here, I want Rowdy to run a couple of things if you haven't already, because I'm terrible for watching it back when you're putting this stuff live. There's two quick things I wanted to run while you're talking, Jose. One was on foveated rendering, just showing off the actual dynamic effect of how that functions. I was curious, are you able to see, like we can see with fixed foveated rendering in like the Go, for example, you could see the kind of lower fidelity edges. When you're using it, because it's got eye tracking and all of this, is it operating in the desktop view, or is it only operating? Is foveated rendering happening in a dynamic way with eye tracking only in demanding applications?
Only in demanding applications.
Okay.
You definitely can kind of see the jaggedness, and you can kind of see the software kind of overcompensating the foveated rendering in real time, depending on what you're doing. To be honest, only if these are things that us Gurks look for in these headsets. But when you're looking at them from, I'm going to use this headset, I'm going to dive in and really see myself. Oh, this is the only choice I have. I don't see these issues. You don't really encounter, especially when you're playing 2D games or you're experiencing immersion from a 3D perspective, right? That you're shutting off the world. That's where foveated rendering does its best, because it's really focusing on what you're looking at.
The canted lenses, so the fact that the lenses are tilted results in a kind of aliasing that isn't seen in Quest 2. So although you've got the clarity of the pancake lenses, in contrast, in stark contrast, I would say, from what I've seen on reviews, do you notice that? Is that a problem for you? Because I'm a guy who I care about aliasing. And how discernible is that? How noticeable is it in your?
It's noticeable, but you abandon it quickly unless you're going to be using the Quest 2 a lot, which is a very weird.
Quest Pro?
Yeah, Quest 2. If you go from the Quest Pro to the Quest 2 and you're going to be using it a lot, those anti-aliasing, the differences in color matching, that's when you start noticing those small intricacies. Okay. But those small intricacies are kind of overcompensated for with weird, once again, like just the lens angle. You lose kind of the high sense of seeing the edges, but you also feel like the rendering area of the edges of the screen are much sharper, which is very weird to say in theory, but you can see rendering happening at the corners of your eyes, right? Where you never experience that, right? So now when you're playing a game, like Pavlov, you actually you don't see like a weird blur coming by your side. You actually see a sharp image kind of popping in by your side. Gives you, those are the little intricacies that you're like, oh, I get it now. I get why it's important to just add more rendering space to the areas of the screen that you never think about.
Right.
So there's little things like that. You never know that, but it's very difficult to engage in these conversations because even foveated rendering is going to get better, right? That it's all based on the way that your eyes are being tracked and kind of optimizing for where you're viewing. I'll tell you, this is a very good example. When I bought the Quest Pro on Tuesday morning, I did the eye tracking setup. There was a big update later in that evening and it reset itself and I had to do the tutorial. And I noticed that the eye tracking demo was faster the second time. I don't know if I put the headset better the second time, placebo effect, but there's little intricacies like that kind of made me hold off in really giving an opinion about the benefits of the software. So I'm really focusing on the hardware here.
The thing is, it's really difficult with a Meta product because I still think to this day, and I know last time we talked a lot about Meta and Microsoft and how they're kind of quite similar companies to an extent. They're very strong on software, and the patches and the updates that they come with on a very regular basis adds so much value to the offering that even 3 months from now, I bet you the Quest Pro is going to feel quite different. One thing I wanted to ask you was, maybe while Rowdy can run a feature which is a scratch away app which shows a rendered world. You did that?
Well. Yeah.
So basically, just for our audio listeners, you're able to, in mixed reality, a developer put together an app where you're looking at basically a VR room, but then you're able to use hand tracking to wipe away, like you would a fogged glass pane or something, and you'll be able to scratch away or wipe away the scene to reveal pass through what it looks like behind. And it's just an incredible kind of feature that gripped me. Do you have, Jose, something that's specifically gripped you, like maybe similar to that, or just something you're using day to day? It could be simple or whatever, but like 2D, what stands out to you?
Virtual desktop. Funny enough, it's just, I know it sounds weird to say that, but it's for the first time I'm really thinking about replacing a monitor. It's the beginnings of like, man, like I really can survive in a VR headset now. It's those conversations that I'm mostly focused about, is figuring out how to bring in outside keyboards, like how to bring in tracking APIs. There's so many conversations that it's so exciting to see the beginnings of just a new user interface and what it means, right?
And you mean, just to be clear, because annoyingly, Oculus in the day called their virtual desktop you mean Guy Godin's virtual desktop?
Oh, absolutely. That's
VRDesktop.net.
VR desktop. That's VR desktop to me. There's nothing else.
Exactly. I'm the same here.
Let's be real. We're talking,
maybe
VR desktop.
Maybe we should like first before like because I wanted to move to chat, but maybe like ask Adam as well if she has like any specific questions maybe still for Jose, and then I'll maybe pass it over to chat, give them the chance a little bit to maybe ask some specific questions. Adam?
I think, at least for me, not too specifically. I was mostly interested in comparisons between like Pico 4 and the Quest Pro Pass-Through, because I actually did, because there's a lot of VR nerds here, so I did get to try the Pico 4's pass-through while I was here, and then I gotta flag someone down because there's a ton of people here who have a Quest Pro now, because nerd Gurks, I guess.
Gurks.
But I'm just interested on if you've tried. I think you have, right? Have you tried the Pico 4 pass-through, and then comparison in that between the Quest Pro having a little bit more depth to it?
I would say this: the Quest Pro has more depth, so the colors look a lot nicer because of the depth perception. So you can kind of see the edges of items at the virtual space. The quality is about the same, really. When you're looking at it from a just a visual perspective. I know that the recording allows you to get full color pass through, and it adds that in post. I'm not a fan of mixed reality at the moment. I'm not a fan of pass through. I think it's useless. I don't think that adding multiple screens in pass-through will be something that people will be doing. Maybe augmented reality, lightweight headsets will add all that, but that's not, once again, what spatial is all about. When it comes to a content creation perspective, it's amazing, right? But it's all that can be done in post. So you could theoretically just record yourself in VR and then just put, I want this to be adapted with also pass-through mode. And then you get the same exact video. So the workflows for content creation are going to get much better. Um, I yeah, it's really
I got to
weird.
give you props there, Jose, for that comment. I mean, you garner some respect from me because I've felt that, particularly in Quest 1 and 2, before we got colored, pass through, it's been almost useless. It's a thing that people are tinkering with, but I'm glad you say it so bluntly. I agree.
It's
For now,
just
for
yeah,
now,
it's for now,
right?
right? Because
But not
eventually you will be able to interact, and that's what's happening right now, right? That's what mixed reality almost became now, which is you can see yourself in the virtual space and vice versa. But no, that's not what mixed reality is. Mixed reality is interacting with the physical items from the virtual world and vice versa. It's once again, it's turning on your TV with pass-through mode on, and you just turn on the TV or turn it off. Um, Turning off your AC, little things like that. Your cat walks around you. It's telling you, like, hey, be careful. Your cat is near you. All of that will, in all of those APIs, all of these hardware, Z-Wave, home automation, your phone, even your phone right now, right? Your phone, all of that has to integrate in a very seamless way. Apple does it very well, right? They have their ecosystem where I literally have been to Apple houses, as people call them, that they have all Apple devices. And if you call them, literally every single device, their lights, their bathroom lights, their speakers, it's like it's terrifying.
To be connected.
You've painted a picture here that's gotten me quite excited because I think of a world where anyone who uses Google accounts and you've got, they started to or any password manager or something, it like lets you the keys of the kingdom. So you're in the same house and you log into something on your phone, you try to log in on your desktop. 5-6 years ago, it was a real pain in the rear because re-enter my credentials or whatever. They kind of have I'll call it like a cookie-esque follower that carries you through now. Doing that in your home environment where you've almost got, it'll feel like God powers when we get to the point where your headset, right? You're wearing it, it's light, it's capable, as you're walking around your place, can interact, even if it's indirectly. It knows the path of how to use the backbone of the internet to get to your fridge, to turn off the lights, or to know that you're going to sit down and watch some TV, so it colors the scene. All that interactive stuff I hadn't really considered before you started talking about how capable the controller is and the kind of universe that we're going to live in a number of years. So thank you for exciting me, Jose, on that in particular. Maybe we should give some open chance here for chat, like Rowdy, you were saying, if there's any questions specifically for Jose.
I spotted one question from... Oh, go ahead, Adam. You first.
There was one earlier, kind of way earlier, apologize, but... And I actually wanted to know this as well. And you may have posted this on Twitter at some point, and I may have missed it. But do you actually have a screenshot or a video of what your setup, your workspace setup looks like? Somewhere so that we could see.
I swear I'm not plugging it, but it is on my Twitter. Yeah, I will reshare it after the episode. But yes,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up for you.
But yeah, I saw it. It was really sleek, actually. I love that he just basically puts the Quest 2 down, and it's like a table, the Quest Pro, and it's like keyboard. And I was like, that's exactly what we want it to be, Jose. Like, you're painting the dream of what it should be used for, that use case. But I like how you've kind of pointed it to people who make and build stuff now.
And to be fair, like I saw, right now I'm using, as I told you, I'm using a Bluetooth relay for my keyboard and mouse, but I actually saw a picture. I will share that one too, but I don't remember who it was, and I apologize, but it was on Twitter. And a content creator took that concept and really went above. So they had like the little Logitech keyboard, and it just looks beautiful. So I'll reshare that one too. I was like, man, that's exactly what we're heading towards. And that's the problem, is that when we think of spatial, we think about these enhancements for the future, we always think of them from such a small visual perspective. It's like, man, like think of your Apple Watch, right? Think of your iPhone, what you can do with these devices now. Imagine what the controllers can detect your heart rate, or can detect a wall, or it can run outside of the headset. So you can literally, they'll be releasing TVs that says, oh, compatible with the Quest Pro controller. You know what I mean? Just weird.
See, that's where I think it won't. I think it's going to be more of an if this then that type universe, IFTTT, because I think we're going to get to the age, like you're painting it as Web 3.0, and I really do think there'll be the capability to go ahead and kind of punch through that backbone to the device, even if it has nothing to do with Meta at all. I think 100%. Those smarts are coming, right? And you were talking about this a little bit earlier about kind of where AI is folding into some of these technologies. And it's kind of the assisting hand, right? Yep. So it'll assist your hand to do what you want to do without you caring about what the middle layer, right?
The future of artificial intelligence is accessibility. And a lot of people are going to start realizing that thanks to VR and all the advancements in XR. It's how do you detect how to make somebody's life easier by automating all the behind the scenes stuff. Yeah. And there's going to be companies that will win this. Apple, once again, does it better than anyone. So what happens when you just close your laptop, put on the headset, and your workflow continues, and all of a sudden you don't have to do any tweaks, nothing. It just iPhone screen right here, your laptop screen is here, your iPad screen down here, and your MacBook, and then your cinema. Yeah. You know, and every person in your house, when they put on that headset, if they're in your family, they pop up in a bubble. No changing of software, and that's what's happening. It's all of that is the walled garden. That's why companies like Meta are over-engineering their hardware. That's why they're working with a software company that does software better than anyone, like Microsoft, because Meta's now realizing, oh, wait, the future, or rather, in order for you to control the most access in the future, it has to be through hardware. You just said it yourself. You don't need Meta to point at the TV and turn it on with the controller. So Meta knows, like, oh man, we might as well own 90% of the hardware ecosystems then to ensure that you do use a Meta headset. Or
maybe forward me the picture of the video chat, because I'm going through your feed, but there's quite a bit there.
I post a lot, yeah. Twitter's my soapbox, man.
Try to rotate it.
It was like a week ago, yeah. That's
Jose the VR test, but yeah, no.
Exactly. No. Well, Twitter's still there. Check him out.
Yeah. Well, one question that I saw pop up was from D1360 VR, and that was about the basically the lack of a depth sensor, and like your opinion on that.
It's not necessary yet. We're going back to pass-through. The pass-through is not effective for us to really require a depth sensor that's going to be abused more than useful at the moment. I'm sure you guys saw there was a lot of rumors and speculations why the depth sensor was removed. One of them was that the ability to see through clothes. That's actually one of the reasons why depth sensors are not used a lot in mobile devices, especially in Asia. So that is a real thing. So that's why we're now starting to look at alternatives for tracking, right? Cameras are going to become the future more than likely of how we're going to determine depth at the moment. So I don't really see a argument of why it's lacking at the moment. When pass-through gets to the point where we want it to be, then depth sensing should be important, and we can make those arguments, but not yet, because it's just silly arguments to have at the moment, in my opinion.
Roddy, did you run the iFixit strip down video yet? Because if not, show
that.
It off. Because the X-ray kind of pass-through showing the Quest Pro's makeup, it looks almost as complicated as one of those X-rays you get of someone who's been in like a bad car accident, and they're having their skull like pieced back together, and they've got 600 plates in there. It's very similar to that, and I found it quite captivating. For those who are really tech geeks, I guess we've got our coined term now. Gurks. If you're a Gurk, then check out the iFixit video, because they go through like a 3-hour process of stripping this thing down. They show where the depth sensor was, but it's really interesting to see how I think, how the thing comes apart, right? Because it also informs you how it went together. Like the back battery, for example, being literally bent. I didn't know that the thing had a curved battery at the back of the head. I mean, I guess you could look at the headset and just that's obvious, right? But it hadn't occurred to me that it was a bent battery cell or series of cells, which is really interesting battery design. I'd love to hear more from Meta actually about that and achieving that. But also it looks that looks easily replaceable with air quotes. But I just thought it was really neat to see all of the work that went into it. And I did see a couple of comments where people were talking about, isn't it weird that they pulled this feature at the last minute? And was that part of the price? And all these different kind of musing questions after this iFixit breakdown. It's pretty commonplace for electronics design to be right up until the very end. I mean, they have to put it through certain tests and things, but when it comes to components varying in cost and availability, them yanking one, at last minute isn't that exciting. I think what Jose's saying is spot on in that them pulling it doesn't impact the product. And even if it was there in the original price, it does what it's designed to do. I think it actually legitimately does more harm than good, because we are now reaching you haven't seen anyone complain about the Quest Pro controllers. In fact, everybody loves them. And the reason for that is that we have figured out that there are alternatives for detecting and tracking information. And a depth sensor at the moment, yes, provides the best with the current technology. It's providing the best depth sensing, but where there's data that proves, okay, wait a minute, but maybe these cameras that we're working with already can do just as good as a use case. And if we do in the future require depth sensors, the code work is already done, the understanding of how the implementing is done, we know what's required in order to make this device use this properly, where now the damage is going to still be there. It's not seeing through clothes is never going to go away if they use these cameras, but thank God, no.
They will, but it will get better in the use cases will, sure, I can see through clothes, but now because, it's 2027 and now all the, cotton, once again, everything evolves. So smart products are a thing. So eventually Gap and all these mainstream clothing companies will release nylon or clothing that you won't be able to see through it. That's what the future is all about, right? It's answering the new questions. So does the depth sensor hurt the product at all? No. Really
no, I think so. Last question I'm going to sneak in here before we move on, but with the controllers themselves, because I've heard of a couple of interesting things. I've heard that they take a bit of time, like 10 seconds or something, to sync with the headset on boot up. And I also heard someone mentioning today of them overheating, the controllers themselves getting to a point of overheating where it shut itself off, kind of like the Go used to do this all the time. I know I've said Go a lot this episode, but hey, it just happened to be that way. Has that happened to you? Are they warm?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an over-engineered device. It's not meant to be pushed beyond the limits of 3 hours per session. Not
the headset, the controller.
Yeah, the controller. That's what I'm saying. But it's the entire experience, because at the moment you can't use these controllers with the Quest 2. So did they say this will be compatible? Yes, but we haven't seen a real case study of this being used for longer than 3 hours and it being done with the drivers that are intentional for that to happen. Because
it's just interesting because like the thermals on the headset itself, it's got two fans and exit paths. The controllers themselves, as far as I saw in the strip down, there's no fans in them. So I'm curious. The heat generation
hot's the wrong word. Warm, a light annoying warmth is the right word to use. You know what I mean? Like if you a phone gets hotter than this. Any mobile device will be hotter than this. A lot of people, I've seen some of those tweets. I personally, no offense to the people that have been saying it, but I do feel like it was just for engaging conversation. I don't think it's going to be a use case where people are going to be like, oh no, I think it may be more than likely being realistic with software. More than likely maybe a driver stay on or a depth sensor stay triggered on for longer than it should.
It happened to Nathan a while. Wasn't it his Quest? I don't remember if it was 1 or 2. Got like, or maybe it was the Go. It was like stuck in a loop where it was just generating heat to the point where it got like raging hot. And I remember he exchanged with Carmack and we ended up finding a bug in there that was causing like a thermal dump. But
so more than
it's
likely
just early
that's what's
days.
happening. It's early
Exactly.
days.
It's just, but it's interesting to hear these cases. So I was curious if in use of the controllers for you, I mean, are you in love with them as much as the internet seems to be?
I love them. I think these make the index knuckles a run for their money. It just feels very reliable, right? It's all ergonomics. Once again, that's why I'm a big fan of devices that are kind of attacking one instead of trying to tackle everything. This is not a controller that you're meant to like hover over your hand and let go of, or else it's gonna fall, right? So there's like a secure grip for it that you're using it for intent, as weird as that sounds, and that's what work is for, right? So you're working with these devices that's meant to feel as an attachment. That's the best answer. There you go.
Good for winter.
Yeah.
Someone just said they double as hand warmers, you know?
As hand warmers, yeah. But I haven't experienced those weird issues. Hopefully not, right? I don't want to say like, yo, like my controller blew up in my hand.
I'm interested for everybody who's out there, you know, who's got pros in their own hands. If you have weird things that just happen to you, I'd be curious to hear those in chat, in comments after, you know, we close the cast and all that, just to kind of get a flavor for what people are feeling. But so far, it's kind of surprising to me. I thought the headset would outweigh the popularity vote, but it seems like the controllers by and far have taken it. You know, they're like,
and it's how well they integrate, right? And real quick, adding to the first question you asked about the controllers, right? So the controllers do have a small hiccup. You do feel it when you turn on the headset. They're tracking immediately, which is very weird. It reminds me of early the Vive ones where they're tracking in a certain space and it just tracks back into your hand. That's what happens. And it's not 10 seconds, it's about 2 to 3. It's more like the controller's tracking, but it's adjusting itself to where it is in the space. So you kind of see it flying off your hand, and then within 2 seconds, it just drifts right back into your hand. It locks better. It only happens when you turn on the headset, and that only happens because it's turning on a Wi-Fi chip. It's not Bluetooth. It's not.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it'll feel different because it's a different technology. We're gonna have to move on from Quest Pro. Thank you so much. We want to take your feedback as a daily user, you know, going into the future. But Jose, thanks for giving us the kind of initial take after your week plus with the headset. That's been really interesting. So, gonna move on to maybe a competitor to some extent. It's probably not on the same table, but for some people, it will compete for their wallet, and that's why I mentioned competitor. So, PSVR 2, Sony PlayStation's blog recently unveiled the launch for PSVR 2, which, man, that made my November straight away, I gotta say. So $549, 530 pounds, 600 euro. I really feel bad. The Europeans are not having a good year. The date it's dropping is February 22nd, 2023. That's why I introduced talking about, about Valentine's Day, because, man, I know who I'm going on a date with, and that's my PSVR 2. Sorry, honey. So there's a Horizon Call of the Mountain experience bundle, $600, so it's just 50 more, and same for the others. So 570 pounds, 650 euro. You get the headset, controllers, some, I'll call them janky headphones, and a game, right? Audiophiles aren't going to probably be singing home about those. And there's also available, which I hadn't seen before, but now we were talking about the advent of charging stations and that was definitely needed back in the day of the Move controllers. There's a dedicated VR charging plate for the PSVR controllers, which are kind of interesting. They've got like almost an orb type shape. So the plate itself has a really neat like crescent moon pattern to it. And that's going to set you back $50, 40 pounds, or 50 euro. Pre-orders will be open on their site in the US, UK, France, Germany. I'm going to say Germany again because, sorry, Meta. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. And in other markets, it'll be sold at participating retailers. Okay, they're expecting 20 plus titles at launch. We know of around about 50 titles aimed for and coming to PlayStation VR 2 next year. One thing I will mention is that registration opened for pre-orders on the 2nd of November. The actual pre-order itself will be available on November 15th. So if you want to get the golden ticket to be able to pre-order, go over and check out the PlayStation blog for a link to the registration place that you can go. I'll be honest, I tried, and I'm personally stuck. This is probably something that's just specific to me. I have 2 accounts. Both of them, unfortunately, are glued to the UK. And everyone on Reddit and forums say, oh, they don't allow you to change regions, so you need to go and create a new account. But both of the email addresses I use on a day-to-day basis are linked to the UK and unable to be set. I queued up for support, sat there for 50 minutes.
Wow.
Then Sony's like, hi, my name is Dave. It wasn't Dave, but let's just say, I'm going to blame Dave because he's a good friend of mine. And I was like, hey, what's up? I just need to change my country. But before I could press enter, the guy drops off saying he can't support the UK. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to have to
make another email, I guess.
I'll have to just get my wife to do it. So she'll own the PS5.
Man.
Oh no.
Do remember this hardware, right, is not backwards compatible. So you're pressing a reset button on your library. So you love those PSVR 1 days, absolutely loved them, but they're gone, right? And so unless a developer has specifically recreated to some extent, or updated their game for PSVR 2, it's not coming across. The only game, in fact, that I know that you wouldn't have to repurchase in that case is Pistol Whip, which Denny Unger mentioned is going to be free for PSVR 1 owners. So that's a pretty cool thing, and a smart way to get them, as like a fish hook onto people's systems. So you've got something for day one to play with, even if you don't have money after having paid for the console. So I'm going to just talk about some of the games as well, but let's just first focus on the release of the news, the way that came down, the price, how you can get to it, how you can pre-register, are you ordering one, all of that. FReality crew, go ahead. What are you excited about PSVR 2 finally having a release date?
Yes. And actually, being completely honest, I'm definitely getting this one because I never owned the PSVR original, because I had like my Vive and I had my Index, and the exclusives on there didn't really captivate me enough to make me feel like I should shell out more money for it. And then by the time I thought maybe, it's like, the PSVR 2 is probably on its way. So this is going to be my first dive into console VR, which will be interesting. So I'm going to get this one. And there are the
awesome.
exclusives I'm more excited about. So that'll be fun.
I'm excited for you. Have you already got a PS5 in the house?
Yes, it took a while and a lot of weird mailing lists, but I did eventually. We were able got one eventually.
Lucky lass, good. Yeah, I'm starting from scratch myself. Rowdy, what about you? How are you feeling about?
I don't think so. Mainly
PSVR
because
2?
I don't have the PS5. I think that's like for me, like the thing, like, and like even though the titles look nice, there's nothing there that really like. I mean, I have to see it first. Like I'm a seer, then I'll believe it. Like if it's really that good that I can't miss out, then I'll probably make some efforts. But I'm not gonna already jump the gun right now. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try and sell you on that in just a minute. But Jose, what about you?
I'm excited. I love Sony. I love PlayStation. I think they're gonna have the best gaming VR focused device currently announced. Quest 3 expected. I still say that. It's because once again they have the history. They've earned the right for me to say something like that, right? They've never strayed wrong for me. I know some of the developers. Some really cool tweets have been kind of under the radar. Some Sony engineers on Twitter have been kind of like very hyped about it, kind of seeing like the Quest Pro release, and talk between the lines are like, hey, we got something better for games. And so I'm excited. I love what the PS5 has done for games. I don't know if you've used the Sense controller, the PS5 controller, is insane. So just
Nice.
Just thinking about what they're going to do with that into VR it just gives me chills.
That's a very interesting point. Not to drag us back to Quest Pro, but there were comparisons between the Sense controller and the Quest Pro with its new 3 haptic motors per controller. How comparable are they?
Yes. I would say the depth of the vibrations of the triggers feel a lot like them. It reminds me. I saw a Thrill Seeker review, and he called the controllers the elite controller of VR. So it does. So if Sony's kind of going after that similar, benchmark, I'm even more excited.
Okay, and then so in terms of this one, I think the price is right. Is my personal opinion. I never expected it to be $400 or something like that. Just to use the American currency for the moment as our benchmark, because in the first round you bought the headset and separately you tracked down move controllers, aim controller, other peripherals, right? But in this case, you're getting everything in the box, so to speak, right? You get the headset, you get the controllers. You're not getting the charging pad. That's separate. But I think that it is very telling. When I said, Rowdy, to you that I was going to try to sell you on the headset, I will say this, okay? Having spent a good hour with Mike just a week or two ago, he said PSVR 2 has ruined VR for him personally. And for example, Call of the Mountain is a title that he is incredibly hyped for, to the same level of hype that he has with Half-Life Alyx when it launched, and he first got to play that. So he didn't ask me to, but he said I could reiterate the amount of hype that he had for this system, for this platform. And he strongly recommended that I get on that train, on that bandwagon. And I do plan to.
But that's one game. Like that's one. I want to see.
I hear you,
and I know PlayStation has a great track record with bringing solid titles out regularly, but I don't know.
And this is a very good point. So let's talk games. Let's talk games for a minute.
Yeah.
Ben. Unless you have more to say, go ahead.
No. The thing that just still kind of upsets me. Not really upsets me. But leaves me questioning is the entire concept of hybrid VR that they're pushing. And I still don't really know what that means. If this means a bit watered down VR experiences, then I'm out. Then that's it for me. I'm not doing it. I want the full on. And it needs to be high level.
So, for example, what we saw a lot of the dabbling in PSVR 1 days, right, where you had a console game and then it had a VR segment. Or you had a console game that had been upscaled to VR, but it wasn't really the full deal. Take Doom VFR as an example. Didn't work very well with the controllers. Was really only a shade of the original Doom game, in terms of the length of the experience. So I don't know. Hybrid could be the well poisoner from to borrow an old term and bring it back to 2022. Let's look at some of the games that were announced as well alongside this release. It was about a week before the price of this came out. So the first one, and this is actually, I'm going to echo concerns that I have for this as well, because I do see a lot of, I'll call them re-releases or an old trick that we've seen done before. First game up is the Dark Pictures Switchback VR, which is coming as a spiritual sequel to Reign of Blood, which was a VR coaster for the first one. You're kind of sat in a seat. You're shooting objects. It's a horror thriller type game as well at the same time. I quite enjoyed it and had a lot of fun. I think it was 7 or 8 hours I got maybe out of that game. Enjoyed it a lot more than I thought for a on-rails coaster shooter. So this game is pulling similar punches. Higher fidelity, got haptic feedback, but at its core, that's the game. It's a kind of similar game, right? So it's not a brand new IP. I don't think it excites me. I don't think it'll necessarily excite Rowdy, right? Or someone else who's played Rush of Blood back in the day. And then you move on to it's a good carnival ride, but it's once you've done that ride,
it's like what you show people the first time they put a headset on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it'll be a great thing in a GameStop shop somewhere. Someone plays that, they'll probably end up buying the console. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
It's great for that kind of demo. I'm also glad to have coasters back because I think they've been missing for a couple of years. I welcome them because I think the VR newbies deserve coasters. I enjoyed it. Next up is Crossfire Sierra Squad, which is battle-based combat. It looks like, honestly, to me, it looks like a generic VR shooter experience combat thing. It doesn't look like it's got the same story depth as something like Blood and Truth. And I'd love to see another Blood and Truth come with that depth of story. But I believe SIE, Sony's Interactive Entertainment Studio, had confirmed or at least hinted the fact that they weren't making another one, which I was sad about because I really liked the first one. But if you're in for a game and you really are into shooters and shooters is all you breathe, that's your bread and butter, then this is another one. And it looks capable. It doesn't look like half-baked or anything. It looks like a capable shooter. I would love to see something, again, a little bit more like what we're getting with Firewall Ultra, which is, again, Firewall Ultra is another re-release, right? It's coming with the new features, and it is the same core game. I've played that game before. I haven't played it untethered. I haven't played it, not with a front-facing camera. So I am very excited for Firewall Ultra because I love that game, and I wish after the fall, I wish I could have put more hours into it, and that's coming. Another one that's interesting. I never thought this was going to make the leap to VR, but there is a stealth horror, a break-in simulator to some extent called Hello Neighbor. So Hello Neighbor VR, which I believe is coming not exclusively to PlayStation. I think that's also coming to Steam, if I'm not mistaken. Hello Neighbor is going to be really interesting. It's basically break into this dude's house. You're playing as I think a troubling kid or teen or something. You've got your tree house and you're trying to break in and do something and get out. I've never played the original game, but in VR, this is going to be getting chased down, hunted in VR is another feeling that whether or not you care for horror games, a feeling of being hunted and chased or whatever when you're struggling with a lock or whatever it is to try to get out, man, that it makes you feel that Neanderthal side of you where you're scared for your life, no matter if it's just a simple kid-looking game. So this one I'm really kind of excited for. There's a few others that are coming. I mentioned Pistol Whip. The Light Brigade is a moody single-player roguelite game, and then again, Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is broad and has enormous scale. And I think if you enjoyed The Climb or you enjoyed Senua's Sacrifice, games like that, I think you really get it with Call of the Mountain. And I'm not surprised that Sony's bundling it because, man, it's colorful and it's vibrant and you really have a hero that you can embody. So it's their Half-Life Alyx. And hey, if Half-Life Alyx comes to the console tool, then fantastic, right? We get a whole smorgasbord of stuff. But again, for people like Rowdy and I, right? We've done it before. Right. So I am scraping through the list. There's a list of about 50 games on Reddit you can check. I didn't want to rattle them off all here, but go check that out. There's a bunch of things coming that are equally as exciting and things that might catch your eye. But like Rowdy, I'll be looking for the new experiences right on this one. I do want to get it. If Sony will bloody let me register, if I can find myself a PS5, and I'm hearing rumors of a PS5 Pro that might be coming. So part of me is I kind of want to wait for the hardware revision, but I don't want to wait for the pre-order. So it's very likely that old Zim is going to be here with a box coming to his house when he doesn't have a PS5 and he just has the headset. That's going to be a terrible future for me.
Cool, guys.
Oh, man. I really hope that doesn't happen, but it might. And I'm warning you now.
So worth it.
So.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so that's us. Anything particularly fun in chat? Otherwise, I'm going to move on and we're going to get...
I think we can move on.
Yeah, good.
I haven't spotted anything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think we're on
thank God. Right, I know it's running late again this time. I knew it would go long. All right, so all this hardware news probably has you chomping at the bit, looking for games to dig into, right? While you're waiting and just wanting to get into these new experiences. Well, there's a busy month of drops ahead, so Jose is going to give us the skinny on what you can expect in the weeks ahead. What have we got, Jose, coming our way?
Oh man, so we finally have it looks like December is going to be one of the busier months for VR. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to list the four bigger ones that are kind of coming out within the next week before the next podcast. So starting with Among Us VR, which kind of been mentioned last podcast also, but it's finally is going to be out. I believe it's on the 10th. It'll be $10 US. That's about £9 for Europeans. That's the next up. We have Aspire 2, which is a game I'm very, very excited for. It releases on November 17th on the Quest platform. It's a co-op first-person shooter. I like to compare that to Metal Gear Splinter Cell, kind of same energy.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's cooperative.
It's cooperative. Yes.
Oh,
that's
cool.
That's different. Yeah.
Like Portal, how Portal has your one tall robot and your one short robot. So the tall one will be able to do certain things that the short one can't, and the short one can go in vents and stuff. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
I got to try PAX, and they're here at New Reality as well. Again, so it's good to see them.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm really excited for this.
Is one a robot, or are we just talking? It's just a vertically challenged police officer. So I don't know. Are you playing? Oh, you're playing as a robot. Okay.
You're playing as a robot, or you're your body's a robot. I don't know exactly. 'Cause I didn't play the first one. If it's like your soul is sent
the way
into a robot?
Yeah, I know how it works. Like with Espire 1, at least like you were taking control of a robot. So you were a secret agent that would like kind of like take control of one of those robots.
But weren't you implanted? Wasn't it RoboCop style story where like you were cybernetic, like, or was it just a remote control?
I
don't
thought it
remember
was
that.
remote. I thought
It's
it was
remote.
remote. I might have been wrong then. Maybe you're right.
Jose's saying it's remote, so we'll go with that.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know for the next podcast, because I'm a big sucker for like stealth games. I'm a big Metal Gear Solid fan, so I definitely want to get my hands on that.
I just remember that you were able to like, use your voice to like, put your hands up.
Yeah.
Put your hands up.
Awesome.
Really? Through the microphone?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
And then
Okay.
they were
They
like,
have voice commands.
yeah,
It's real
that was
super
awesome.
fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who's Rota? No, it didn't work.
There we go. But next we have Broken Edge by Fast Travel Games and your bucket. It's a Steam VR November 17th release. It looks like it's going to be about $10 US, about £9 for international. It's a one-on-one joust simulator. You use these giant swords, so it's a lot of strategy, and pretty much you're breaking your. Pretty much you have to make sure your sword doesn't break, or you defeat the person before your sword breaks. So it's a very intense strategic one-on-one sword fighter. And then we have the Veil VR release.
Oh, right. Finally coming.
Finally coming. So they're finally going to let people the mainstream of the world get their hands on it. I have been kind of looking around to see if there's a price yet for it. I do know that they I remember early in the year they were saying that if you asked for the game or wanted to try, you would be given the game with the key and you would keep it. So I don't know if that still applies at the moment. I know it was like during the summers. So I'm going to assume that they may be making an announcement of price soon. But yeah, that's looking like it's going to be released on November 17th. And that's actually what I have for the foreseeable next 2 weeks until the next podcast.
Cool. Very nice.
Yeah,
sir.
Very good. Glad to get us some releases as things warm up towards the holiday season. Give us something to play that's not just collecting skins and after the fall. So that's anyway your show for today. So if any of you have questions for the crew, now's your chance while we zip over the finishing line and recount the show times for anyone who's new here. We live stream every other Saturday on YouTube and Twitch. Show goes live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. in the UK, except when time change is messing with us, like today. If you missed the live show or just showed up late, that's all right. We keep the nightlight on in the form of an audio version, illuminating SoundCloud, iTunes, and Spotify in the week after our broadcast. Like and sub for more rounded thumbnails, and we'll see you again on the next podcast. All right? I guess we're going to get out of here if chat doesn't have it. I was going to say goodbye, but I just wanted to check if chat had anything before we
I just saw Crash Organism saying thanks for the show, loving it, and that's what we like to hear.
We still got Nimzo hanging around. He's been with us a long time,
That's
since the Sonic days. All right, well, we can say goodbye then. All right, see everybody, and see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.